Hey guys, tonight we dive into something that might make your pillow feel just a little safer. Germany during the medieval period, where you've barely opened your eyes before the world starts hurting you. Picture it. Cobbled streets soaked in last night's chamber pot slop, timber-framed homes creaking under their own weight, and a sky so grey it feels like even the sun gave up centuries ago. The smell? A delightful cocktail of rotting onions, unwashed hair, and wet wool. And that scream in the distance. Just someone learning, again the hard way, that ladders made from splintered fir branches are not structurally sound. You might have romantic notions about the past, maybe knights, maybe candlelight, maybe an inn with warm bread and butter. Yeah, you probably won't survive this, not even 5 minutes, but don't worry, we'll make it last long enough for your imagination to do the bleeding. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your current location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The alley greets you with a brick. You weren't even walking. You were just standing there, gawking up at the quaint row of buildings stacked like leaning pastries, and some random clay fragment smacks the side of your forehead. No one even yells "watch out," because in this neighborhood, falling objects are just part of the ambiance. The timber-framed houses loom over narrow alleys, stacked with precarious layers of daub and wattle, a medieval architectural decision that screams, "Hey, let's store our firewood on the 3rd floor." You stagger backward, hand on your temple, which is now red, not from some dramatic battle wound, but from a dried-out brick loosened by frost and a poorly trained pigeon. No one's going to apologize. You think you spot someone peering down from a window slit, but it's just a goat poking its head out. This is a place where even the animals have upper floor real estate. Your brain's already swimming, but here's a quick primer while you check for a concussion. The year's somewhere between 1300 and 1350. You're in a modest town in the Holy Roman Empire. Let's call it Esfeld, because the real names all sound like they were made up mid-sneeze. It's ruled by a bishop who lives behind stone walls and only appears during taxes or plagues. The population, a few hundred, maybe 1,000. Most can't count, and census taking is what happens right before you get conscripted, so no one volunteers numbers anyway. Now the sounds begin to hit you. A barking dog tied with a rope that looks older than logic. Children shrieking with joy, or terror, can't be sure. Somewhere, a pig squeals with the fury of the condemned. And behind you, a door slams open with the subtlety of a battering ram. "Out of the way, idiot," yells a woman hauling 2 sloshing buckets that smell like a dare. Meet Inga. She's about 12, barefoot, and already swearing like someone who's survived 3 marriages. She's hauling mourning waste to the street because plumbing is for cathedrals and fairy tales. She doesn't care who you are. You're standing in her dumping zone. You step sideways just in time, only your left boot catches the edge of her bucket. Congratulations. You've now been baptized by a mix of human waste and pig slop. You smell like breakfast, but for rats. Here's a fun fact. Medieval German towns had no formal garbage collection. People tossed everything, manure, rotting cabbage, the occasional dead cat, into the alleys. If it piled too high, someone set it on fire. That's it. That's the sanitation policy. The streets are narrow for a reason. Taxes were based on frontage, so people built up and back, cramming families, goats and secrets into vertical shoeboxes. The overhangs darken the alley even more, turning it into a damp echo chamber, where whispers carry and screams get absorbed by damp straw. You walk forward, because going back isn't an option. You'd have to pass Inga again, and she's already labeled you as the day's inconvenience. You step over what you hope is a pile of mud. Spoiler, it's not. A cart rumbles past, pulled by an ox with an eye infection. The driver, an old man whose spine looks like an ampersand, smacks it lazily and spits in your general direction. "Outsiders," he mutters. Or maybe owl slappers, hard to tell with the dialect. In any case, you don't belong here, and everybody knows it. You find yourself in front of a tanner's shed. Don't go in, just don't. Even the locals pretend it's cursed. The smell alone can curdle your soul. Animal hides soaked in urine and quicklime. Yep, historians still argue whether tanning was considered a job or a punishment from God. Either way, Tanulf the tanner hasn't smiled since his apprentice fell into the lye pit. You hold your breath, but it's no use, the scent is now part of you. It's like licking the inside of a medieval boot. You want to gag, but you're not sure what's left inside you to lose. Someone brushes past you fast, too fast, and you feel a sharp sting across your ribs. You gasp. You check your side. A small scratch, shallow but bleeding. It takes a moment to register that someone just tried to pick your purse. No, not with finesse. With a rusty nail tied to a stick. They missed the pouch and got your tunic instead. The cut is accidental. The insult is intentional. You glance around, but there's no one to chase. Just a dozen heads turning away, pretending not to notice. One boy grins and raises 2 fingers in mock salute. He's gone before you can even mutter a threat. This is daily life here. If you're not bleeding yet, give it a second. You push forward, dazed and dripping. You've been in town less than 5 minutes. You smell like latrine stew, your ribs are scratched, your boots are soiled, and the sun still hasn't decided whether it's showing up today. Welcome to medieval Germany. 5 minutes in, and you're already bleeding. The butcher's block is the town clock. You know how some towns use bells or roosters to tell time. Here in Esfeld, time is measured in screams, and by the blood pooling beneath the butcher's bench. You hear it before you see it. The rhythmic whack, squelch, scrape, like someone trying to murder a watermelon with a fence post. You round the corner, and there it is, a wooden stall splattered with so much blood, it looks like it's trying to start a war with hygiene itself. Meet Wilka. She's 16, maybe 17, depending on how you count years spent elbow deep in pig intestines. Her hair is braided tight beneath a cap stiff with dried fat. She's got a knife in one hand and a sheep's head in the other. And she's humming. Not just humming, cheerfully. The tune is lilting and bright, something that would sound lovely played on a harp, if it weren't being overlaid with the sound of bone cracking. Wilka was apprenticed to her uncle, Gernot the butcher, but he keeled over mid-chop during Lent 2 years ago. Some say heart attack, others say he choked on his own arrogance. Either way, Wilka took over, and no one's dared argue. Mostly because she's better with a cleaver than half the town's men are with a sword. You watch her slam the blade down, severing a pig's leg with horrifying ease. The leg flops to the side like it just gave up on life. Wilka tosses it onto a pile already buzzing with flies. She doesn't even look up as she mutters, "Meat's fresh, fingers off unless you're buying." The smell is indescribable. Meat sure, blood obviously. But also something older, something sour, and burnt and maybe slightly haunted. Here's a tidbit. Medieval German butchers weren't just meat sellers, they were status symbols. They were members of powerful guilds, often seated on town councils. Their job was not only to feed the people, but to make sure no one accidentally or intentionally sold bad meat. Spoiled pork could ignite a panic, or worse, an execution. Because poisoning the masses, that's treason light. Butchers like Wilka had to kill, drain, skin, quarter and sell, all while fending off hungry customers and local politics. If someone died after eating your sausages, you'd better hope it was just coincidence. If not, well, the scaffold's always open. A customer steps forward, some lad no older than 10, holding out 2 silver pfennigs and asking for lung. Only if it's fresh, he says, trying to sound older than his jerkin. Wilka grins with the softness of a storm cloud. Boy, this pig was oinking 3 hours ago. If that's not fresh, I'll eat my boot. She doesn't blink when she throws the lungs at him, literally throws, and they slap into his sack with a sound that's going to haunt your dreams. Behind her, 2 older men argue about whether they smell spoiled fat. Wilka hurls a shin bone in their direction and yells, "Complain again, and I'll wrap your noses in tripe." They shut up immediately. You try to step around the puddle of something red and thick. Too late. Your boot sinks in with a wet noise that might actually be alive. The sole slips. Your arms flail. You don't fall, but only because you accidentally grab a dangling pigtail nailed to the stall post. A tail. With fur still on it. You suppress a scream. Barely. Wilka finally notices you. You look pale, she says, eyes narrowing. First time seeing where dinner comes from. You nod, because honestly, words have abandoned you. She shrugs. Give it a week. You'll be elbow deep in soup guts and arguing over which parts scream the loudest. She's not joking. Now here's a wild little gem. Historians still argue whether butchers doubled as unofficial medics. Some say they helped with amputations or draining boils when no barber surgeon was around. Others insist that's folklore, made up by desperate peasants who couldn't afford leeches and had to settle for whoever had the cleanest knife. Wilka might not cure your plague, but she will slice off that infected finger if you ask nicely, and maybe give you a discount on trotters afterward. You watch as she hacks a cow's knee in half. The bones snap like frozen branches. Her hands are steady, her eyes are dead calm, and you know with absolute certainty that this girl could kill a man and carve him up before breakfast. Not that anyone would care. You shuffle backward, trying not to vomit into your tunic. Your head still ringing from that earlier brick incident, your side still bleeding from the pickpocket nail swipe, and now your boots smell like meat juice and regret. You hear the town bell toll once, dull and metallic. That's not for prayer. That's Wilka's unofficial timekeeping. She butchers 4 pigs, 1 sheep and a goose by noon. It's how everyone knows it's market day. Time, here is a butcher's rhythm. You don't watch the sun, you watch the dripping hook line. You back away slowly. Wilka flashes a grin. Come back tomorrow, she calls. We're boiling blood cakes. Tastes better than it sounds. You believe her. That's what scares you. The next street is quieter, narrower. You can almost hear yourself think again. That is, until a door opens beside you and a clay pot full of something empties right at your feet. No warning, no hesitation, just a splash. And the realization that 5 minutes in this town is already testing your survival instincts. You wipe your face on your sleeve. It doesn't help. Piss pot parade at sunrise. You hear it before you see it. Sploosh. Then again. Splat. Followed by a yelp from someone down the street who wasn't fast enough with their reflexes. You glance up. Every window on the 2nd floor seems to twitch. A hand pokes out from one of them, pale, calloused and absolutely unbothered, and with casual cruelty, it flips a ceramic pot into the alley. The contents, let's call it, last night's regrets. Human waste, old broth, some vomit, maybe a dead rat if you're unlucky. This is your morning greeting. No cocks crowing. No fresh bread aroma wafting through the shutters, just airborne filth delivered from above by people who treat gravity like a weapon. Esfeld is awake, and you're in the splash zone. You leap sideways but not fast enough. Your cloak, already stained from the butcher's stall, is now coated with a mystery substance best left unnamed. It smells like cabbage, and feet, and maybe a hint of something that used to be alive. Welcome to the piss pot parade. It happens every morning. The moment the sun hits the wood frames, out come the chamber pots. Not because it's a tradition, because that's how people deal with their bodily functions in a town with no plumbing, no sewers, and very few standards. And no, there's no schedule. You can't plan around it. It's not 8 a.m. sharp. It's whenever Gertrude upstairs decides she's done with her bean stew aftermath. And by the way, there is technically a rule. You're supposed to shout Gardes low, or in the German equivalent, Gebet, before launching your slot missile. A polite little warning. A human courtesy. Nobody does it. Too early. Too tired. Or maybe they just enjoy the chaos. You duck under a wooden awning, trying to escape the aerial onslaught. Next to you is a boy, no older than 7, who already looks like he's aged 20 winters. He's got a bucket, a stick, and the 1,000-yard stare of someone who knows the street too well. First time, he says, deadpan. You nod. He gestures upward without looking. Watch Frau Hellwig's window. She dumps twice. Sure enough, a clay pot plummets from the heavens like medieval vengeance. It explodes on the cobblestones 2 feet away. The splash radius is impressive. You shield your face with your sleeve. The boy doesn't even flinch. He's already moved on. Here's your grim reality check. Towns like Esfeld don't have latrines in every home. If you're lucky, you've got a chamber pot, a simple lidded bowl you keep under the bed. If you're really lucky, it hasn't cracked yet. What do you do with the contents? Well, this. Toss it out the window, and let rain animals, or God, deal with the aftermath. Streets are essentially communal toilets, and you wonder why the plague came. Historians still argue whether the stench was just part of daily life or an actual civic crisis. Some records suggest people tried to clean the streets with straw or ash. Others say they just ignored it until the rats started walking upright and asking for rent. And it's not just waste. People throw everything out the window. Bones. Old food. Rotten fruit. One time, a severed goose head. True story. You shuffle forward, stepping lightly, like each cobblestone might explode beneath you. The stones are slick with 1,000 sins. You try not to breathe through your nose. Ahead, a man is already cleaning up, or pretending to. He's got a broom made of tied twigs and he's pushing the filth toward a side alley. Not into a bin, not into a drain. Just, away from the main road, out of sight, out of smell. His name's Ruckert. He's the street scummer. Not an official position, more like a local joke. People flip him copper coins sometimes. Other times they flip him gestures that aren't quite as polite. He stops sweeping and eyes you. You don't look diseased yet, he says. Yet, you manage. He shrugs. Give it a day. The air does things to people. Ruckert is missing 3 teeth and 1 toe, which he proudly displays by lifting his foot from his sandal. Frostbite, he explains, though you strongly suspect it was something more bite than frost. He nods toward a bucket beside him. That's today's catch. Don't step in it. Had to pay a boy 2 hens to scoop it. You don't ask what's inside. You already know. Behind you, another splash. A woman in a veil screeches from a 2nd floor window, blaming the neighbors for aiming wrong. An argument erupts. It involves at least 1 accusation of devil worship, 2 slanders about someone's mother, and a threat involving sheep. You keep walking. Someone claps your shoulder. You whirl. It's a merchant, fat, red-faced and cheerful in a way that suggests mild drunkenness. New boots, eh? He says, pointing. You glance down. Your boots are stained. Brown, yellow, something green in the sea. Don't worry, the man grins. They all look like that after a week. Builds character. He laughs and disappears into the crowd, leaving you with a compliment that felt more like a threat. A cart trundles by, its wheels squelching as they roll through puddles that should be declared biohazards. The driver is whistling. He's got no nose, literally. Just 2 holes where his nostrils used to be. Leprosy. War. No one asks. You pass a group of girls balancing wooden yokes across their shoulders, buckets hanging from either end. Their feet are bare, and their shins are splattered with mud, or worse. One of them, maybe 12, offers you a sympathetic glance. You learn to time your steps, she says, and keep your mouth closed. You nod. That's survival advice worth engraving in stone. Finally, you reach the edge of the main street, where the waste thins out and the air smells less like soup gone wrong, and more like stale hay and donkey breath. It's almost peaceful. A rooster crows, late, confused and mildly offended. You take 1 breath, deep, risky, and promptly gag. You've survived the piss-pot parade. But your clothes, your dignity, and your remaining optimism did not. Your shoes are made of suffering. They looked sturdy at first, leather, stitched, maybe even lovingly worn in by someone before you. But the moment you tried to walk more than 10 feet in them, they turned into tiny medieval torture chambers for your feet. Welcome to turn shoes, soft-soled, stitched inside out, and then flipped, hence the turn. They were the most common footwear among German townsfolk in the Middle Ages. Flexible, sure. Affordable, maybe. But supportive, protective, waterproof. Not even close. You thought your sneakers hurt after a hike. These shoes have 0 arch support, 0 padding, and absolutely no grip on the uneven, mucus-slick cobblestones you're stumbling across. You try to step around a pile of what might be pig entrails when your foot rolls sideways. Your ankle screams. Your knee buckles. You clutch a post for balance, and that post of course is coated in something sticky and warm. You look down. Your left heel has already started to blister. Beside you, an old man chuckles. First time, he croaks. You nod. You've stopped even bothering to speak at this point. He's wearing boots held together by hope and horsehair. Reinhardt, he says, tapping his chest with pride. Town cobbler. Third best. Third best. You don't ask who's first. You assume they died of gangrene. Reinhardt shuffles closer and squints at your feet. Ah, those are Gunter's work. Poor lad. Hands like sausages. Good for gripping ale, bad for fine stitching. You feel a breeze slip through the seams in your shoes. Great. Reinhardt coughs into a cloth that used to be white. We made 'em with boar hide. Thick, durable. But boars got rarer,
After the Count decided he liked hunting them with crossbows and prayer, he pauses. Now it's cow. Cheap cow. Soft cow. Too soft. Like walking on grief. Your heel pulses with pain. The blisters burst. You can feel it. The warm wet bubble beneath your sock. Oh wait, you're not wearing socks. Nobody is. You sit down on a low stone step, trying to catch your breath, and Reinhardt plops beside you like this is a scheduled appointment. You ever soak 'em in lye? You blink. Lye. Makes 'em tougher. Burns your skin a bit, sure. But toughens the leather and your feet. Double game. You start to respond when he pulls off his own shoe. It makes a noise that shouldn't exist outside horror films. Inside is a toe that might once have been a toe, but now looks like a dried fig wearing a bandage. He holds it up like it's a trophy. Lost that one when I stepped on a roofing nail during the Whitsun Fair. Didn't notice for 2 days. Too drunk. Kept dancing. You feel a little sick. Tell you what, he says, reaching into a pouch. Rub a little tallow on your heel. Keeps the blood in. He slaps a chunk of animal fat into your palm. It's still warm. You hesitate. Reinhardt shrugs. Up to you. Or bleed out. Your choice. You dab the tallow onto your heel, suppressing a groan. It stings. Then it oozes. Then somehow, it helps. Reinhardt chuckles again. There you go. See? You're becoming local. He stands, joints popping like wet twigs. If you last a week, come by my store. I'll trade you a better pair for a copper and a story. Then he's gone. Limping, whistling, and trailed by a dog that might just be an unusually confident rat. You sit there for a moment, wondering if this is what rock bottom smells like. Answer, yes. It smells like blood and bacon grease. Here's your historical bite of the day. Shoes in medieval Germany were a luxury. Most peasants went barefoot. Those who wore footwear had to either make them, barter for them, or inherit them. There's documentation of shoes being passed down like heirlooms, even if they didn't fit. The idea of buying your size didn't really exist. And socks. Oh sweet child. Socks were for monks, lords, and people who didn't regularly have to run from oxen. Your feet throb. You wiggle your toes. One feels weird, like it's no longer part of your team. Just then, a small girl runs by with a tray of boiled potatoes, slips on a patch of horse droppings, and her entire left boot flies off and lands in your lap. It's still warm, she screams, scoops it back up without apology, and disappears around the corner. You don't even flinch anymore. You stand, limping slightly, your heel now wrapped in questionable fat, your shoes still wet from God knows what, and your dignity shedding like your skin. You are officially breaking in your medieval footwear, one blood blister at a time. Get in line, or get the plague. It starts as a low hum, a kind of murmuring chatter that floats through the air like a bad omen. You follow the sound around a bend in the alley, and suddenly, there it is, the queue. No signs, no stalls yet, just a thick line of people twisted into a crooked snake, curling down the muddy street in front of what appears to be a table, or half a table, possibly a door laid flat on crates. It's the bread line. You're not sure if they're waiting to buy food or for divine judgment, but either way, they're not smiling. The man at the front has his arms crossed and a scowl so deep it could store rainwater. He hasn't moved in 10 minutes. Welcome to the medieval market, where the early bird gets dysentery and the latecomer gets mugged. A woman near the back notices you standing there and narrows her eyes. If you're cutting, she says, I'll scream. You weren't even thinking of it. But now you're locked in. You nod politely and slink to the back of the line. A boy behind you wipes his nose on his sleeve, looks you up and down, and whispers, hope you're not hungry. They only brought 2 loaves today. 2. For a town of hundreds. You hear your stomach growl in protest. Someone elbows you, not maliciously, just making room. Everyone's packed together like nervous livestock. The air smells like wet wool, spoiled milk, and old fear. Here's the thing. Food security is a joke in 14th century. Asphalt. Crops fail. Roads flood. Rats eat more grain than the villagers do. And bread. It's both the staple and the luxury. It's made from whatever's available. Rye, barley, oat, or sometimes chestnut flour, if things get desperate. The finer the flour, the pricier the bread. You spot the baker up ahead. An enormous man named Otto, who has forearms the size of tree trunks and an apron so crusted with flour it could double as armor. Otto doesn't smile. He sweats. A lot. He's slicing dense, dark loaves into wedges. No scale. No fairness. He eyeballs it and slaps a chunk into the outstretched hand of whoever's next, without even looking up. A man near the front tries to haggle. Otto raises one brow and pulls out a cleaver. Negotiations end swiftly. You shuffle forward. The line moves like molasses in winter. Every now and then someone coughs, which triggers a round of side eyes and step backs. No one trusts coughing anymore. Because here's the kicker. Plague season isn't over. It's never over. There's a boy, 2 places ahead of you with purple spots under his jaw. His hands tremble as he clutches a coin. You take a slow step back, and that's when you hear it. An old rasping sneeze. Someone across the square doubles over and lets loose a sound that belongs in an exorcism. A few people flinch. One woman actually runs. You don't need a medical degree to know what that sound means. People whisper, "It's back, it's not gone. Didn't his uncle die last week?" Historians still argue whether the waves of plague in towns like Asphalt were continuous or came in pulses. One thing is clear. Everyone lived in fear of that one sound, that one moment, when someone coughed too wet. The mayor once ordered all sick people to ring bells around their necks so others could steer clear. It backfired when people began ringing bells just to clear market lines faster. Now everyone acts like illness is a moral failing. If you cough, that's on you. You clearly weren't pious enough, clean enough, or lucky enough. Maybe you looked at the priest funny. A woman 2 spots in front of you clutches her rosary. She's whispering to herself. The man behind her mutters, "Not again. We just buried the shoemaker." You consider abandoning the line. But then Otto slams another loaf down and shouts, "Next," and your stomach reminds you that it's either eat or pass out. You edge forward. The man in front of you turns. His eye is swollen shut. You try to look away, but he knows you saw. "It's not plague," he growls. "It's barley rot." You nod, smile, swallow the bile. Finally, it's your turn. Otto glares at you, grabs a chunk of bread that might have once been soft, and throws it at your chest. "Copper," he barks. You fumble a coin from your pocket and toss it onto the table. He doesn't check it. He doesn't care. He's already on to the next person. The bread is heavier than it looks. You squeeze it. It fights back. Probably 2 days old. Maybe 3. Doesn't matter. You stagger away from the line, cradling your prize, and bite into it. It tastes like sawdust and sorrow. You chew anyway. You pass a group of children fighting over a turnip. One of them is barefoot. Another is chewing bark. You almost offer them a chunk of your loaf, but a man with a limp shoots you a glare that suggests weakness will not be tolerated here. So you keep walking, munching, limping, hoping the bread settles before the sickness does. And in the back of your mind, you start counting how many spots that coughing man had under his jaw.
Water will ruin you quicker than wine. You'd think, in a place that smells perpetually like old cheese and regret, people would be gulping down water by the gallon. They don't. In fact, they avoid it like it's cursed. Because in medieval Esfeld, water isn't your friend. It's a fast track to internal combustion, dysentery, typhoid, cholera. They don't come from undercooked meat. They come from that deceptively clear stream trickling past the town gates. The same stream where people bathe, wash clothes, dump waste, and occasionally float livestock carcasses downstream when no one's looking. You first discover this local quirk when you stumble into a small public square. In the middle stands a stone trough, shallow, mossy, bubbling faintly. You think, "Ah, a fountain, civilization." You bend down to cup your hands, eager for something cool to rinse your cracked lips. "Don't," the voice comes from behind you. Firm, male, close. You glance over. A monk, barefoot, carrying a small bundle of herbs and wearing a robe so patched it's more hole than fabric. His name is Brother Carsten, and he's got the haunted look of a man who's seen too many intestines. "Drink that," he says, nodding at the water, "and your next cup will be served by the devil." You freeze, dripping hands hovering mid-air. He walks over, kneels beside the fountain, and dips a stick into the water. Pulls it out. The tip is slimy. Green. Wriggling. "Frog spawn," he he says, matter-of-factly. And worse. You back away. He stands, sighs, and offers you a small flask. Beer, he says, small ale. Weak, but safe. Boiled before brewing. You sip. It's bitter, warm, slightly sour. But your throat welcomes it like a long-lost friend. Here's the thing, in places like Esfeld, water was dangerous. Not because they didn't want it clean, but because they had no way to clean it. Wells could be poisoned by runoff. Rivers by sewage. Rainwater was collected, sure, but storage barrels grew things. Sentient things. So they brewed. Even children drank what was called small beer. Low alcohol, mildly fermented, safer than water, but still gross by modern standards. A daily staple, like bread, or suspicious gossip. Carsten sees you grimace and chuckles. You get used to it. Or you don't. Then we bury you. He waves a hand and continues walking, barefoot through puddles that hiss and bubble under the summer sun. You follow him, more out of desperation than trust. He turns into a small alley where a line of clay jars sits beneath a makeshift awning, each one filled with something liquid. He points at them as he passes. Woad dye, pickle brine, tallow scrap, goose oil. Don't mix them up. Happened once. Man washed his feet in tallow and pickled his toes. You believe him. He stops outside a small doorway. Inside is a room with drying herbs, suspended frogs, and parchment pinned with drawings of questionable anatomy. He gestures for you to enter. You pause. He shrugs. Suit yourself. But if you drink that street water, I'll be seeing you again real soon. Face down. He disappears inside. You sit on a low wall nearby, chewing the last of your bread, watching people pass. One man is carrying a bucket labeled, "For the horses." He dips a ladle in, drinks deeply, then immediately sneezes into the street. You glance back at Carsten's doorway. Maybe he's right. Historians still argue whether beer replaced water entirely, or just partially. Some say clean wells existed. Others insist fermentation was a necessity, not a preference. What's clear is this: the average medieval townsperson consumed more ale than water. And in places like Esfeld, where sewer systems were, let's call them aspirational, that choice meant the difference between life and lying in a ditch, screaming about invisible worms. You hear a splash nearby. A woman's washing her baby in a basin, scooping water from a bucket that reeks of wet dog and onions. The baby giggles. The woman doesn't. You think about how many lives were shaped by what people couldn't drink. How health was a dice roll. How someone figured out, probably by accident, that beer didn't kill them, but water did. You wonder who the first person was to realize the connection. You wonder what it cost them. A bell rings in the distance. Carsten re-emerges, hands red from scrubbing something unholy. He glances at you again. You want to live long enough to regret things, he asks. Stick to beer. You nod, and take another sip. This bathhouse is full of secrets. The steam hits you before the door does. It seeps through the cracks in the wood, clings to your skin like a second layer, and carries with it the faint, sour scent of boiled herbs, sweat, and something vaguely personal. You hear laughter inside, low, lazy, too relaxed for this town. A splash, a moan, a hiccup. Something hits the wall, and slides down with a wet thump. You step inside, and instantly regret it. Welcome to the Esfeld bathhouse, one of the few places in town where people voluntarily remove clothing. But don't get excited. This isn't a spa. This is an oven where shame comes to sweat and gossip grows like mold. The room is lit by a few pathetic tallow candles. The air is thick enough to chew. Benches line the walls, all warped by steam and so worn, they've got splinters with seniority. Copper tubs bubble in the corners, fed by kettles of heated river water dragged in on the backs of half-starved boys. And the star of the show, Hans the bathhouse boy. He's thin, quick, and terrifyingly efficient. He darts between bodies with a ladle in one hand and a bucket in the other. He doesn't blink, doesn't pause, just scoops, pours, scrubs, and glares like his life depends on it. Probably because it does. Don't sit there. He barks at you without looking. Someone peed there yesterday. You flinch. He tosses a cloth your way. It lands on your shoulder with a slop. Wet. Questionable. Still warm. You look around. Half the room is naked. The other half is nearly so. Some people are laughing. Some are arguing. Two women are playing dice with a monk who's pretending to bless the water between turns. A man to your left raises a jug. A latte, he offers. You decline. Politely. He shrugs and gulps half of it before pouring the rest over his bald head. Here's the thing about bathhouses in medieval Germany. They weren't just for cleaning. They were social. Business deals were made here. Affairs were started here. Some were even conceived here. Hygiene was the excuse. But the real reason people came was to talk, scheme, flirt and listen. And Hans, he hears everything. You sit on the edge of a bench, trying not to touch anything directly. The wood creaks under you, as if offended by your hesitation. Across the room two merchants are arguing over salt rights. One holding a cloth over his nether regions like modesty is still fashionable. Another man snores loudly in a half-submerged tub. A boy pokes him with a stick every time his head slips beneath the surface. You turn to Hans. Is this normal? He snorts. Normal's what happens outside. This is better. No rats. No boots. And people can't hide their knives in here. You believe him. You start to relax a little, until you spot something floating in one of the tubs. You don't ask. And here's your fun historical twist. Bathhouses were actually encouraged by the church, at least for a while. Cleanliness was seen as godly. But then came the whispers, that the steam opened pores, and sin. That nakedness tempted the devil. That diseases spread faster when people washed together. Bathhouses went from necessary luxury to suspected dens of debauchery in less than a century. In Esfeld, they're still legal. Barely. But the priest only visits at night, in disguise. Hans leans in close. You see that guy over there? He points his ladle toward a skinny man picking his toenails. He's the miller's cousin. Caught him stealing flaxseed. They cut off 2 fingers. Still bathes like nothing happened. He scoops some hot water from a bucket and dumps it over the back of a woman scrubbing her hair with ashes and goose fat. She doesn't flinch. She's been here longer than the floorboards. A new customer enters, dripping, limping, and already unbuttoning his jerkin. Hans turns to you. Your tub's ready. You raise your eyebrows. That's mine? He nods toward a wooden barrel with a suspicious black ring around the rim. You step closer. It smells medicinal. Maybe. Or maybe like wet dog and boiled cabbage. You slide 1 foot in. Warm. Then the second. Too warm. Then lower. And suddenly, it's almost nice. The water cradles you. The sound of voices fades to a background buzz. The steam rises. Your feet forget they're bleeding. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Someone farts. Hans doesn't react. Better out than in, he mutters. The monk playing dice slaps the table. 666. The Lord is with me. A woman burps so loudly she startles herself. You close your eyes. For a moment it's almost peaceful. Your bones ache a little less. Your skin tingles. The bruises from your earlier adventures melt into the murk. Then Hans drops a ladle of cold water on your head. Time's up, he says. Next. You scramble out dripping and dazed. He tosses you a scrap of linen that pretends to be a towel. It soaks through instantly. As you step outside, the cooler air slaps your face. You shiver. Steam rolls off your skin like a departing spirit. You're cleaner now, but somehow you feel dirtier. Bathhouse secrets don't rinse off easily. You've already broken the law. You didn't mean to. You weren't trying to provoke anyone. You weren't loitering, stealing or setting fire to a hay cart, yet. You were just walking, enjoying the rare moment of post-bath clarity, when someone hissed from a doorway. You can't wear that. You stop mid-step. What? The woman in the doorway glares. She's short, broad-shouldered, and built like a wine barrel. She waves you closer like she's summoning a stray pig. Come here before someone else sees. You glance down at your tunic. It's simple, undyed, a little wrinkled, maybe still damp from steam. but apparently it has offended the medieval fashion police. She yanks you inside by the sleeve. "Sumptuary law," she whispers. "You're in violation." You have no idea what she's talking about. But welcome to Esfeld, where how you dress isn't just a question of style, it's a legal matter. This woman, her name is Ulrika, and she's a weaver by trade and an unlicensed gossip by compulsion, grabs the hem of your tunic and holds it up to the candlelight like she's examining a corpse. "Linen, too fine. No patches, no grease. Are you a merchant's son? A squire? No?" You shake your head. She clicks her tongue. "Then why are you dressed like you've got tax immunity?" You try to explain you bought the tunic from a man who swore it was basic. She waves a hand. "He lied. If you can walk through the market without getting spat on, your clothes are too good." She's not being poetic. She's being literal. Sumptuary laws were medieval Germany's way of keeping people in their place visually. Tailors were fined for sewing sleeves too wide, caps too feathered, or gowns too close to aristocratic fashion. You, dear listener, just committed a visual felony by wearing a tunic not covered in enough dirt. Dye is also a problem, Ulrika says, poking a bit of faint blue near the collar. "Only nobles get blue. That's woad or indigo. You see blue, you think has servants. You don't have servants, do you?" You shake your head again. "Good," she mutters. "Because I'd have reported you already." She disappears into the back of the room and returns with a sack. "It smells like onions and neglect. Here," she says, tossing it into your arms. "Wear this." You hold it up. It's not a tunic, it's a sack, with holes cut for arms. "It's legal," she says. "It's itchy. It's brown. It's perfect." You reluctantly pull it on over your clothes. It's heavy. It chafes. And it smells like a goat had a nervous breakdown in it. "You'll blend in now," she says proudly. "No more attracting trouble." You don't feel less conspicuous. You feel like a walking burlap curtain. But she seems satisfied. "Remember, too much lace. Illegal. Too many buttons. Suspicious. Shoes with pointed toes. Only if you've got a title or a death wish." You stammer. "Buttons." She nods. "Buttons are political. Buttons mean wealth. The mayor's cousin once wore gold clasps and got pelted with radishes." You glance out the window nervously. Ulrika leans in close, her voice a dramatic whisper. "You know what they did to Marta the tanner's wife?" You shake your head. Her apron had embroidery. Just little stars, stitched in red. Nothing fancy. But the Reeves' wife saw it and decided it was above her station. She got fined and had to kneel in front of the church for an entire Sunday. "What happened to the Reeves' wife?" Ulrika grins. "Marta tripped her in the pigsty a week later. Broke her hip." There's a long uncomfortable pause. "That wasn't the punishment part," she clarifies. You pull the sackcloth tighter around your shoulders. You now understand that in this town, status isn't earned, it's enforced. Visually, brutally, publicly. Historians still argue whether these laws were truly about morality or just another way to keep power where it already lived. Some say it was about preserving Christian modesty. Others say it was about making sure no one forgot who owned the biggest table at the feast. You step outside again, squinting in the daylight. No one looks at you now. No sneers. No hisses. No accusations. You are invisible. And somehow, that feels worse. A boy walks past wearing a cap too fancy for his age. A man yells at him. The boy disappears down an alley. A woman with bright green ribbons gets stared at. She rips them off before reaching the square. You pass a mirror. Actually, no, there are no mirrors. You pass a puddle and catch your reflection. You look like a medieval vegetable, but you're safe. And safety, here, comes at the cost of vanity. Don't smile. You'll bleed. It starts with a twinge, right behind your upper lip. Just a little throb. Maybe from the cold air. Maybe from the bread you gnawed like a starving beaver earlier. But then it sharpens. Deepens. And you make the fatal mistake. You smile at someone. A kind-looking old man with a crooked back and a basket of turnips gives you a passing nod. And you in your sackcloth tunic and blistered boots decide. Somehow,
that this moment deserves a grin. You feel it instantly. A tooth, front left, wiggles. The pain lances up into your cheekbone like lightning. You press your fingers to your face. Warmth, swelling, something sticky. Congratulations, you've joined the dentistry death lottery. Esfeld's least popular club. Bleeding already, a voice says beside you. You turn. A girl, no more than 10, offers you a cloth. It's already stained red. Everyone does, she adds, especially this week. It's tooth season. You blink. She shrugs. Something about the rain. Rain affects teeth, apparently. Let's talk about medieval dental hygiene. Or more accurately, the stunning absence of it. People chewed on twigs, rinsed with wine, sometimes dabbed their gums with ashes or mint. But no one brushed. Toothpaste hadn't been invented. Floss. You wish. And when things went wrong, and they always did, there was no such thing as a dentist. You had 3 options. The barber, the blacksmith, your neighbor, Helga, who owned pliers and a questionable sense of mercy. In Esfeld, your best bet is the first, which is how you find yourself following a trail of muffled groans to a tiny wooden shack marked by a sign with a red and white pole. Inside it smells like sweat, iron, and something sour enough to peel bark off a tree. Meet Bastien the barber. He's not cutting hair today, he's pulling teeth. In one corner, a man sits slumped over a bucket, drooling blood, and muttering the Lord's Prayer. In another, a woman clutches her jaw, eyes wide, as Bastien sterilizes his tools by dipping them in ale. You try to back out. Too late. Bastien sees you. You've got the abscess face. You touch your cheek. He's right. It's hot, tender, and already ballooning. You nod reluctantly. He gestures to the chair. It's not a chair. It's a wooden crate with a rope to bite. You sit. Bastien pulls out his toolkit. No dainty mirrors. No numbing gel. Just a set of iron hooks. A wedge and something that looks like salad tongs from hell. Left side, he asks. You nod. Don't move. You want to scream. You want to run. But instead you shove the rope between your teeth and squeeze your eyes shut. The pressure is immediate. Then the cracking. Then, oh God, the tearing. There's no numbness. No clean pop. Just grinding. Tugging. A sharp snap. And the warm gush of blood that follows. You don't faint. Barely. He holds it up. Your tooth, root and all, bloody, cracked, victorious. There, he says, smiling. You'll live. You spit into a bowl. Pink foam. Your hands shake. Bastien pours something over the wound. It sizzles. It smells like fire. And regret. Vinegar and sage. He explains. Keeps demons out. You nod. Mostly to stop yourself from vomiting. Fun historical aside. Tooth extraction in medieval Germany was often done by barbers who also performed surgeries, amputations and bloodletting. Tools weren't sanitized. Anesthesia was ale. Pain tolerance, or screaming. If the root broke, too bad. Sometimes, they'd break the jaw to get the rest. Historians still argue whether it was worse to live with a rotten tooth or die from the cure. You stumble out of the barber's shop, pressing the cloth against your face. The air feels colder now. Your head swims. You taste iron. You pass a boy who sees your bloody chin and nods with solemn understanding. First tooth, he asks. You grunt. He holds up a necklace strung with 6 of his own teeth. They say if you bury them under the gallows tree, your next ones grow straight. You're not sure if that's folklore or trauma. Probably both. You limp down the street, half dazed, jaw throbbing, and realize, if you want to survive here, you should stop smiling, or chewing, or opening your mouth. Really, because in Esfeld, even your teeth are trying to kill you. The rat and the priest both judge you. You're trying to keep your head down. You've been bled, bruised, bathed, barely, and had a molar removed, with what may have been a fireplace tongue. You're sore. You're limping. And thanks to the old cloth wrapped around your face, You now look like a peasant mummy with anxiety. So, naturally, now's the perfect time for public moral correction. It starts with a bell. Not the fire bell, not the market bell, the judgment bell. Higher pitch, more sanctimonious. It clangs twice. And the townspeople know what that means. Confession time. You're shuffled. Herded really. Toward the church. Nobody asks if you've sinned. Nobody checks whether you're Catholic, Lutheran, pagan, or just confused. You have ears, don't you? You live here. Then you're guilty. Welcome to medieval spirituality, where attendance is mandatory, and shame is a group activity. The church looms at the end of the square. It's cold stone and crooked timber, with a tower that looks like it's leaning slightly out of boredom. Above the door, a carving of St. Michael stabbing a demon. The demon looks suspiciously like the mayor. Inside it's even colder. Damp. The kind of damp that feels intelligent. You step in, and a rat runs across your foot, like it owns the place. You yelp. An old woman hisses at you. Respect the house of God. You consider mentioning the rat but decide against it. He's probably on the clergy. The pews are full. Locals kneel on the straw-covered floor. The altar smells like candle wax and old lilies. The priest, Father Albrecht, stands at the pulpit, arms raised. His robes are so ornate, they might be worth more than half the village. Gold thread, embroidered trim, a jeweled cross, and beneath all that, scowl lines so deep they cast shadows. He begins to speak loud, measured, harsh. The eyes of the Lord see into every heart, every lie, every theft, every envy, every lazy loaf. He sees you, Roderick, and your missing tithes. Roderick, a pot-bellied miller, shrinks in his seat like he's trying to melt into the floorboard. Albrecht continues, now in Latin, now in German. He transitions seamlessly between threat and promise, between eternal damnation and vague forgiveness. So long as you confess, pay your due, and never question his right to own a house with 2 chimneys. A line forms at the confession booth. You're pushed into it, literally. A woman behind you mutters, "You smell like demon vinegar. You need this." You enter. It's dark. You kneel. The wood creaks. Your knees hate you. A screen slides open. "Speak," the priest says. You blink. I may have smiled. Silence. Also, I drank small beer before communion. A sigh from the other side. "Is that all?" You swallow. "I was thinking unkind things. About a bathhouse boy. And maybe a goat." The screen slams shut. You sit there a moment longer, unsure what just happened. A bell rings. You exit. Albrecht is waiting. He points a finger at you. 3 prayers. 2 coins. No meat until next Sabbath. You nod, already poor, and now apparently vegan. Here's the truth. Confession in medieval Germany wasn't always private. Sometimes it was a public spectacle, especially for the poor. If you were rich, you got a gentle scolding behind closed doors. If you were poor, your sins were shouted at you by someone wearing a hat that costs more than your house. Historians still argue whether the confessional system was more about control or conscience. It clearly did both. It purified the soul and reinforced the power hierarchy. You stagger outside, throat dry, pockets emptier, and dignity clinging by a thread. You sit on a stone step near the church, trying to remember your assigned prayers. Pater Noster. Something. The rat from earlier scurries past you again, this time slower, this time staring. You lock eyes. He pauses, judges you, and disappears into a crack beneath the altar. You shake your head. Even the rats know I'm guilty. A passing child nods solemnly. They're sacred rats. They live off holy crumbs. You sigh. Of course they do. The bell rings again. Time for another sermon. You run, or at least, you try to. This field belongs to the church. You thought you were free. Out of town. At last. Away from rats with divine authority and priests with the charisma of a guillotine. The path ahead leads into open space, fresh air, grass, maybe even a flower or two that hasn't been stomped to death. You step through a crooked wooden gate, into a patch of lumpy earth and wild weeds. A few cows munch lazily. Birds chirp. A breeze kisses your face. You close your eyes and sigh. You gonna pay for that breath. The voice cuts across the field like a knife. You open your eyes. There stands Brother Odo, bald, sunburned, and shaped like a walking compost pile. Odo is a lay monk. A man too ill-tempered for prayer, too large for weaving, and too committed to taxation to be loved. He carries a staff taller than himself, and a pouch of tiny scrolls he refers to as blessings with T. You look around. I'm just standing here. You say. He nods. Exactly. On God's dirt. You blink. It's a field. He leans in close. A tithe field. Everything that grows here, breathes here, or looks too long at the sky, here belongs to the Lord, and I am the Lord's rent collector. He holds out a small scroll. On it scrawled in charcoal is your name. You don't remember signing anything. That's not mine. He shoves it into your chest. You're here, aren't you? Apparently. That's enough. You're about to argue when he steps to the side and points to a tiny plot of dirt with a few struggling carrots. That's Sister Bruna's garden. She's 73, can't walk, and still owes 4 eggs and a prayer for using rainwater without permission. You think I'm letting you off? You stare at the garden. It's tragic. The carrots look suicidal. He stamps his staff once. Coin, or work. You fumble in your pocket. A single copper. Odo snatches it with the speed of a pickpocket. Good. He grunts. The Lord thanks you. He'll let the cows keep breathing. Here's your little theological twist. In towns like Esfeld, nearly all usable land belonged to the church. Not just churches and monasteries, but fields, orchards, vineyards, forests. If it grew food, supported animals, or looked like it might one day produce something of value, it had a tithe attached to it. A tithe wasn't a suggestion. It was a divine invoice. Milk, even your son. If it produced anything halfway useful, refused to pay, that's theft from God. And Odo had the muscle and legal authority to make your life unpleasant. He walks with you now, explaining this system, as if you asked. This patch here, he says, pointing to a shady glen, belongs to St. Agnes. She doesn't visit, but she still gets her cabbage. That one over there, St. Cuthbert's. We lease it to the baker, but he's behind. So we took his wheelbarrow. Fair is fair. You pass a sheep grazing lazily under an apple tree. That sheep, Buto, Odo says, was born on churchland, eats church grass. It bleats. We get half the sound. You don't even question it anymore. He stops suddenly. You look able-bodied. 2 steps, he says. You stood on blessed ground for longer than a breath. That's a toe. We can't let people just be. He hands you a hoe. It's heavy, blunt, covered in something that might be moss or marrow. You'll help me dig up Father Hildebrand's potato plot. He's fasting, so they're just for show. You want to refuse, but behind him, 2 boys with matching robes and smirks pick up stones. Not threateningly, just pointedly. You sigh, and you dig. 1 scoop, 2. Your arms ache instantly. You're already limping from bad shoes, bleeding from your jaw, and carrying the spiritual trauma of a town where even the bathwater judges you. Odo leans on his staff and watches. You're a natural. Maybe we'll keep you. You dig faster. Here's the most twisted part. The church genuinely believed it was helping. Tithes maintained hospitals, hosted feasts for the poor, and sponsored festivals. Sometimes, but mostly, they reinforced who held power. Divine power, earthly power, inescapable power. Historians still debate whether this ownership model was effective community care or sanctified extortion. In Esfeld, it's both. By the time you're done, your hands are blistered. Your back's gone stiff. Odo claps you on the shoulder, so hard you nearly face plant into the potatoes. You've done God's work today, he says. Now go sing somewhere else. You shuffle back through the gate, every step radiating pain. Behind you, Odo blows a whistle. The sheep stop grazing and start walking in a perfect line back toward the monastery. The rats wish they were that organized. You've just paid rent to the sky. You don't know how, but somehow, you still owe more.
The forest hunts you back. You didn't mean to wander this far. One moment you were limping past Odo's potato patch with the grace of a wounded duck, and the next trees, tall, quiet, indifferent trees, their trunks like pale ribs sticking out of the ground, their leaves whispering secrets in a language you don't speak. No one followed you. No one called after you. That alone should have been a warning, because in Esfeld, no one goes into the Schwarzwald alone, not if they like breathing. You pause at the edge of the tree line. A narrow path winds between brambles and roots. It doesn't look threatening, peaceful, even. For the first time all day, you hear no screaming, no bells, no someone yelling about chicken theft. So you step in. The light changes instantly. Dimmer, greener. Your footsteps vanish into soft moss. The scent is wild, wet bark, distant mushrooms, something sweet and decaying all at once. You breathe deeply, and then you see the ribbons, red, tied to a branch. Then another, and another. You follow them. Each is stained, torn, fluttering slightly, despite the still air. You start to remember the rumors, villagers disappearing in the forest, leaving behind only clothes, or teeth, or their names whispered by grandmothers after dusk. You were told it was wolves, or witches, or a debt unpaid. But then you met Tilda. She steps out from behind a tree, so silently you nearly choke on your breath. She's barefoot, draped in green wool, eyes the color of old bronze. Her hair is tangled but regal, her face smudged but fierce. She looks 15, or 50, timeless in a way that makes your brain want to file her under. Don't ask. You're off the path, she says. You nod. Because you are. And because speaking might get you cursed. She walks closer, every movement so smooth it feels rehearsed. Didn't Odo warn you? You shrug helplessly. She studies you. You're bleeding. You touch your jaw. The cloth is damp again. The pain has returned. Of course it has. Tilda frowns. Blood calls things. She doesn't elaborate. She turns and gestures for you to follow. You hesitate, but the trees behind you feel less friendly now. So you limp after her. Here's the thing, in medieval Germany, forests weren't mystical. They were terrifying. They weren't nature. They were lawless space. Bandits lived there. Exiles. Wild animals. Spirits if you asked the right drunk shepherd. Even the church kept its distance. Forests were the edge of the map, where control ended and guessing began. Historians still argue whether these fears were superstitions or survival instincts. But in Esfeld, the line between myth and memory is thinner than tree bark. Tilda leads you to a clearing. In the center a stone circle, barely visible beneath vines and moss. Someone or something has carved symbols into each one. She sits on a log and begins chewing a root. You sit too, awkwardly, trying not to bleed on anything sacred. She watches you for a long time before speaking. They say a Roman legion marched through here once, never came out. You nod slowly. Others say the forest moves, that it remembers pain, that it calls to the wounded. She reaches into a pouch and hands you a wrapped bundle. You open it. Herbs, pressed leaves, dried berries. Chew this, for the infection, or the spirits. Depends who you ask. You do as she says. It's bitter, earthy. Your tongue goes numb almost instantly. She smiles, not kindly. You'll feel heavy dreams tonight. Let them pass. You blink. Tonight. She stands. You won't make it back before dusk. It's watching now. You start to ask what she means, but she disappears behind the trees. Gone. No footsteps. No parting words. Just gone. You sit alone. The air feels thicker. The forest is silent now, not peaceful. Listening. You try to stand. Your legs are stiff. Your vision swims. The herbs, maybe. Or something worse. You stumble toward where you think the path was. But it's changed. The trees have moved. Or maybe they always looked like this. You call out. No one answers. Not even the birds. And that's when you see the shape. Tall. Wrong. Half antler. Half shadow. It doesn't move. You don't breathe. You step back. Trip. Land hard. Your jaw screams. Your head throbs. When you look again, nothing. Just trees. Just fear. You finally find your way out by accident, collapsing into a ditch that leads to a muddy trail, lit by the dim glow of Esfeld's edge. You crawl back toward the town, covered in moss, cold sweat, half of your mind screaming. You reach the gate just as the first bell of Vespers rings. You made it. But the forest isn't done with you. Not yet. Bells mean fire, not worship. You're still shaking from the forest. Your hands tremble. Your knees feel hollow. Your brain keeps replaying that shape in the trees. Those antlers. Those eyes. That silence. You try to laugh it off. To tell yourself it was a trick of the herbs. Or a side effect of being smacked around by fate for 12 hours straight. But then the bells start ringing. Fast. Loud. Panic speed. And that's when you realize. This is not the church bell. This is the fire bell. The sound crashes through the town. Like a war cry. You hear shouting. Stomping. The rush of feet in every direction. It's no longer a sleepy plague-ridden village. It's a wasp nest someone just kicked. You spin around. Smoke. Somewhere near the east wall, just above the thatched rooftops, a black ribbon begins to rise. Thin at first, then thickening fast, curling upward like a beast waking from under the ground. You limp toward it, because at this point, what else are you going to do? Run. As you round the corner into the main square, chaos greets you with open flaming arms. People are hauling buckets. Some are crying. Some are just standing, useless, holding tools or baskets or each other, and there flames licking at the beams of a bakery. You think used to sell those strange cinnamon bricks. The fire crackles like laughter. A boy stumbles out of a door clutching a squawking chicken. The feathers are already singed. The boy's hair too. In the center of the road stands Brunhilde, the town bell ringer, a woman of formidable size and louder voice. She's swinging the clapper with both arms, sweat pouring down her cheeks, eyes wild. Get the line moving, she screams. Buckets. Now. The town doesn't have a fire brigade. It is the fire brigade. Everyone is responsible, because everything here burns. Thatched roofs, straw beds, pitch-sealed walls. It only takes one bad cooking fire, one overturned oil lamp, or one idiot with a torch and a grudge. A man beside you groans. That's the 5th one this year. Another woman adds. At least it's not the tannery. The tannery you remember is the one building in town that's basically made of sulfur and doom. You find yourself swept into a line. Someone presses a bucket into your hands. It's heavy, half full, sloshing everywhere. Pass it, someone yells. You do. And another. And another. The chain stretches from the riverbank to the bakery. Men, women, children, all sloshing, splashing, grunting. Your arms ache, your legs shake. You try to glance back at the fire, but can only make out shapes in the smoke, glowing orange beams collapsing inward, sparks flying upward like desperate fireflies. The bell never stops. Your ears ring. Then screaming, you turn. A figure stumbles from the burning bakery. Her apron's on fire. A dozen people shout at once. A blanket is thrown. The flames hiss out. The woman, gasping, collapses to her knees. You watch as Otto, the enormous baker, emerges next. His face is blackened, eyebrows gone, but he's alive. He's dragging a sack over one shoulder. Not flour, not coins. Bread. He saved the bread. The people cheer. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. He drops to the ground beside the others, hands on knees, breathing like a bellows. The oven cracked, he says. It just cracked. You feel something heavy press into your hand. It's a piece of bread, warm, burned at the edges, soft in the middle. Otto nods at you. For helping. You accept it like a medal. Here's the thing. Fire was the medieval apocalypse. No one had insurance. No one had hydrants. If your house caught fire, you grabbed your family and prayed to every saint you knew. If your neighbor's house caught fire, you prayed faster. Historians still argue whether fire codes existed in towns like Esfeld. Some say there were rules about storing hay. Others say the rules were written after half the town burned down, more than once. You slump against a wall as the flames die down. The crowd begins to disperse. Someone's playing a flute now. Why? You don't know. Maybe just to prove they're alive. The bell finally stops, and you feel the silence like a slap. The building is gone. Smouldering bones of wood and stone. Black streaks across the cobbles. Ash falling like dirty snow. You chew your bread. It tastes like smoke and survival. Next to you, Brunhilde drinks from a ladle and mutters, "Better than last time. At least no one died. Yet." She eyes the sky like she doesn't trust it. You don't either. The wind shifts. A few embers dance into the air. A bird shrieks. Somewhere, a child giggles. Esfeld lives on. Until the next bell. Nights look better from afar. You hear the hooves first. Heavy. Thunderous. Like some god banging a drum underground. Then the shouts. Cheers. The excited scramble of children who haven't yet learned that horses can kick the innocence out of a person. You limp toward the town square, still sore from the fire bucket relay, and carrying a bread crust that now feels like a brick in your gut. People are gathering. Something important is arriving. Trumpets squawk. Not gracefully, not with any particular rhythm. It sounds more like someone strangling a goose through a metal pipe. And then Sir Dietrich enters. The knight. His armor glints dully in the afternoon sun, smeared with mud and something darker. His helmet plume, once white, is now the color of old gravy. The horse is magnificent, huge, black and radiating irritation. The crowd parts. He doesn't dismount, doesn't smile, just raises a hand. The town claps like they've been trained to rhythmic, polite, cautious. You've heard of Sir Dietrich. Everyone has. He's not local. He rides through once a season, collecting something or delivering something, or just reminding the town who owns the land around Esfeld. Which, surprise, isn't Esfeld. It's him. Or rather, the noble he serves. But he enjoys acting like he owns the place. And for all intents and purposes, he does. You inch closer. The man is huge. Not in the muscle-bound fantasy sense, but bulky, barrel-chested. The type of body that says, "I've never lifted anything but tack scrolls and roast duck." Next to him ride two squires, both too young for stubble, but already sneering like aristocrats. One is eating an apple, the other is dragging a small sack from the saddle. The sack is dripping. You don't want to ask. Sir Dietrich clears his throat. "Loyal citizens," he says. "I bring word from the House of Hesse. Taxes due next moon. Military levies expected by Pentecost. And the Reeve is instructed to surrender all grain reserves by Michaelmas." A long silence. Someone coughs. The Reeve, a skinny man in a hat too big for his dignity, stumbles forward. "But my lord, the harvest." Dietrich raises a hand. "The war needs bread." "What war?" His eyes narrow. "A war. Which means don't ask." You start to back away, slowly. That's when the squire drops the sack. It hits the ground with a wet thud. Spills. Coins. Food. No. Ears. Human ears. Dry. Shriveled. Tagged. The squire grins. "Bandits. Caught near Rotfeld." Sir Dietrich doesn't flinch. "Let it be known thievery is punished. Especially on our roads." You're not sure who R refers to, but it's not you. The crowd recoils. Children are ushered away. You lock eyes with a woman who mutters, "Better not speak Latin too loud this week." They're jumpy. You nod, horrified, because knights in the medieval world aren't your bedtime story paladins. They're tax enforcers, military freelancers, political muscle with pointy hats. They ride in, demand things, break things, occasionally marry things, then they leave. Until next time. Historians still argue whether knights like Sir Dietrich upheld order,
or simply enforced fear. In places like Esfeld, fear is the only currency that spends well. He finally dismounts, groans a little. Armor, turns eyes, is heavy and sweaty, and smells like last week's lamb stew if not maintained. He walks toward the church, throwing the reins to a peasant who fumbles and gets kicked in the thigh. The squire with the apple laughs, loudly, and then you see it. The squire reaches into his cloak, pulls out a small dried sausage from someone's stall, and pockets it. No one stops him. He looks around, dares anyone to say something. No one does. You stay still, pretend to be bread. Bread doesn't get stabbed. Sir Dietrich returns, now holding a sealed letter and a string of coins. He drops them into the Reeve's open palms. Distribute, or don't. It's all the same to me. Then he remounts. The squires follow, laughing. The ears stay behind. He doesn't say goodbye. He just rides off, hooves pounding, armor clanking. The crowd parts again. The wind picks up, and just like that the night is gone. The smell of his horse remains. So does the fear. The coins you notice are mostly French. The Reeve tucks them away. No one cheers. No one moves. Until Brunhilde mutters, "Well, that was romantic." And someone, possibly Roderick, snorts loud enough to offend 3 saints. You head back toward the square, stomach turning. Nights look better in songs. Much better. Witch or widow, flip a coin. You're walking along the outer road now, looking for silence. You won't find it, but it feels like a noble goal. Your face still aches from the tooth pull. Your tunic smells like smoked pig fat and moral panic. And the bread you were given earlier might have broken something in your molar socket. You pass a cottage, small, crooked, thatched roof sagging like a tired sigh. Its door is open, but no one enters. A black cat stares at you from the windowsill, not hissing, just watching. People nearby cross themselves. "That's Gertrude's place," someone whispers. "Don't look too long." You look longer, because of course you do. Gertrude is sweeping the threshold. She's wiry, grey-haired, and moving with the ease of someone who knows exactly how many people wish she'd disappear, and isn't giving them the satisfaction. She stops sweeping, looks at you, and smiles. That's how it starts. She's not what you expected. Not hunched, not muttering, just a woman, older than most, skin like parchment, and eyes like flint. She nods once, then goes back to her sweeping. A woman across the road spits into the dirt. "Which," she says, quiet, but sharp. Another shrugs. No proof. Yet, you ask what Gertrude did. "She healed a goat." The first woman replies, as if that settles it. Apparently it does. Welcome to medieval gender logic, where an older woman with knowledge of herbs, animals, or how to read a weather pattern, is either a blessed widow, or a servant of Satan. There is no middle path. There is no appeal. Gertrude, you learn, used to be a midwife, delivered half the children in Esfeld, taught a few women how to ease childbirth, with mugwort tea, and gentle words. Then one child died in the winter. The mother bled out. The baby didn't cry. And suddenly, all those herbs, suspicious. That cat, demonic. Her silence, proof of guilt. Now people avoid her, except when they don't. Like today, a farmer you vaguely recognize from the breadline appears at her doorway, in his arms, a small child, crying, burning with fear. He says nothing, just stands there. Gertrude opens the door wider, doesn't speak either. She takes the child, lays her on a linen cloth, and reaches for a bundle of dried lavender and tansy. She doesn't ask for payment, doesn't demand secrecy, but she never breaks eye contact with the father, not once. You stay and watch because no one tells you to leave. She dips a cloth in cool water, rubs it on the girl's head, crushes a root between 2 stones, and mixes it with something oily, rubs it on the child's gums. She sings, quiet, in Latin, or Saxon, you can't tell. It sounds like sleep. The child quiets. The fever lingers, but the shaking stops. The father begins to cry. Gertrude nods. She'll last the night. He places 2 coins on the table, and you watch as Gertrude places the coins in a small box beneath a loose floorboard. She sees you. You'll tell them what you saw, she asks. You pause. I saw you help her. She raises an eyebrow. And what else? You shrug. That the child lived. She considers you. then returns to crushing herbs. Here's the thing, witch trials weren't always dramatic. Not all ended in flames. Often they began as whispers. A dead cow, a sick child, a jealous neighbor. Most accusations came down to one truth. A woman knew things she wasn't supposed to, or lived alone, or didn't smile often enough. Historians still argue whether accusations were about religion, control, or just raw fear. Maybe all three. The result was always the same. One woman marked as other, and slowly pushed to the edge of community, dignity, and safety. Gertrude doesn't ask your name. You leave quietly. As you walk away, the black cat follows you for a few steps, then stops, sits, and watches. A boy nearby throws a stone. It misses. The cat doesn't flinch. Neither does Gertrude. You glance back once more. She's in the doorway again, sweeping, and somewhere, in some other cottage, someone is probably whispering her name over a pot of soup, wondering if she's good or evil. They never ask her, because here, a woman alone is a question waiting to be answered by fire. It's raining blood at the smithy. At first you think it's just rain. The sky's been grumbling since noon, and the air feels wet enough to drink. But as you limp down the cobbled path toward the forge, something drips onto your arm. Warm, sticky. You wipe it instinctively, and stir. Red, too dark for wine, too thick for water. You look up just in time to see a second splatter hit your boot, followed by a high-pitched screech, and the rhythmic clang 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 of hammer against metal. You've reached the blacksmith, or as the children call him, the Thunderman. His name is Lucas, young, scarred, and never seen, without a soot halo around his head. The locals said he was born during a lightning storm, that his mother gave birth with a hammer in one hand and a nail in the other. No one knows if that's metaphor or trauma. The forge is a cave of heat and fury. Smoke coils out of every gap in the stonework. Sparks burst into the air like fireflies possessed. Metal glows. People shout over the roar of the bellows. And above it all, Lucas works, shirtless, blistered, swinging a sledgehammer, with a rhythm that could rattle the bones of the saints. You edge closer. The blood, a goat carcass hangs outside the workshop door, half-skinned, dripping, not for meat, for oiling the tools. You try not to retch. Lucas doesn't notice you right away. He's mid-swing, hammering a horseshoe into submission, while cursing at a nail that refuses to sit right. Stubborn bastard, he grunts, just like your mother. You're not sure if he's talking to the nail, or himself. You take a cautious step inside. The heat hits like a punch. Your skin begins to prickle. Your tunic soaks instantly. Your teeth sweat. He finally glances over. You bleeding, or just ugly? He asks. Bit of both. You answer. He grins. That's how you know you'll survive the next 5 minutes. He gestures to a stool. You sit, then immediately leap up again. It's hot enough to fry judgment. Lucas goes back to work, shaping iron, as if the metal owes him money. You watch as he lifts a sword blade from the coals. Not finished. Raw, jagged, steaming. He turns it in the firelight. Commission, he mutters. Local lord's nephew. Wants it by Friday. Idiot thinks swords make him noble. He spits. The floor hisses. You ask what he uses to cool the steel. Piss, he says casually. You blink. Mine. Sometimes goat. Depends on the day. He dunks the red-hot blade into a barrel. Steam erupts. The room fills with the aroma of scorched urine and burnt metal drip. Here's the dirty truth. Smithing in medieval Germany was part craft, part violence. Blacksmiths weren't just tradesmen. They were essential, revered, feared. Some thought they had magic. Others thought they were magic. Who else could bend iron with fire and will? Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were seen as closer to the divine or to the devil. Most likely both. They worked with elements that frightened people. Flame, metal, blood. They forged weapons. They repaired chains. They were craftsmen and gatekeepers of war. Lucas wipes his forehead with a rag that used to be. You need anything? He asks. You hesitate. Shoes, you say. The ones I've got are suicidal. He nods. I've got scraps. He reaches under a bench and pulls out something that once aspired to be a boot. He tosses it to you. You catch it. It smells like a candle that lost hope. Won't last winter, he says. Might last Tuesday. You thank him. Don't. He mutters. You'll owe me. You believe him. A girl rushes in, no older than 9, holding a snapped scythe blade. Emergency, she pants. Lucas barely glances. Let me guess. Wigan tried to cut vines again. She nods. He sighs, takes the blade, and tosses her a copper coin. Tell him to use shears like a civilized She runs out. You glance around. Every surface is scorched or stained. Tools hang like ribs from the rafters. A wall of horseshoes glints like silver fish. One corner is blackened, clearly where something exploded recently, probably on purpose. Above it all, Lucas rules like a soot-covered king in a forge-shaped kingdom, and when he finally pulls the sword from the water and holds it up, it sings, not musically, but with weight, with menace, with purpose. You shiver. He notices. Swords don't kill, he says. People do. He tosses it onto a cloth, grabs a new rod of iron, and starts again. Clang, 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 clang. You slip out quietly. The air outside feels thin, cold, alive. The goat carcass still drips behind you, and somewhere down the street, someone else is about to need a new blade, or a new limb. Either way, Lucas will be ready. Bread can kill you, literally. You were promised food today, real food, the kind that doesn't fight back or remind you of your own dental trauma. Instead, what you get is a warning. Don't eat the rye, whispers a passing shepherd, as he herds 3 sheep and a goat with a limp. You blink. Why not? He doesn't answer, just touches 2 fingers to his forehead, and keeps walking. It's not the first time someone said that today. And now, as you sit beside a cart full of blackened loaves, the mystery deepens. They smell fine, a little sour, a little dense, standard for Esfeld, but there's something strange about them. Flecks of color you can't quite name, purple-grayish, like mildew crossed with regret. You see a woman across the square, holding her stomach, muttering a prayer, and sobbing. A child next to her vomits yellow foam. A third is laughing, not playfully, frantically. The sound doesn't fit the air. You take a step back. Ergot, someone whispers behind you. You turn to see Agnes, a midwife, and part-time baker's assistant, chewing on fennel, and looking grim. Bad grain, she says. Rye's cursed this year. Too wet, too long in storage. Mold got in. You squint at the loaf in your hand. It's mold, she nods, but not the bread kind, the kind that talks to your blood. You slowly place the loaf back into the cart, like it might explode. Here's your horrifying historical fact of the day. Ergot is a fungus that infects rye. When consumed, it can cause vomiting, hallucinations, convulsions, burning sensations in the limbs, called St. Anthony's fire, and if you're unlucky, death. It mimics gangrene, it mimics madness. And in the Middle Ages, no one knew what it was. Some thought it was witchcraft, others thought it was divine punishment. Some towns blamed the millers, some blamed the wind, but in places like Esfeld, they just kept it. Agnes wipes her hands on her apron. We had a case last year, a whole family, dancing in the street, laughing, then silence. You ask what happened. They fell asleep in the stream, she says, voice flat. Didn't wake up. A man stumbles past you now, dragging a cart of his own. He's singing to himself. Badly, his nose is bleeding. His left eye twitches. People give him space like he's on fire. He bought the rye. You sit down hard on a barrel, stomach churning. Agnes offers you a crust from her pocket. Barley, she says, safe. For now. You bite it. It tastes like dust and disappointment, but at least it doesn't hum in your skull. You watch as the mayor's servants load a wagon with the questionable loaves. He's going to redistribute them to poorer households. Charity, he calls it. You call it slow-motion murder. A young girl eats a slice near the well. Her hands begin to shake. Her eyes widen. She screams, then laughs, then runs. No one stops her. No one wants to touch her. The crowd parts like a wound. You turn to Agnes. Why don't they burn it? She shrugs. Wasted food is a sin. Wasted charity is worse. That's Esfeld logic. Die with a full belly. And at least the priest can say, you were grateful. Historians still debate how widespread egotism was. Some believe it inspired entire waves of hysteria. Others link it to early witch trials, mistaking hallucinations for possession. What's certain is that no one understood it, and even fewer dare talk about it. Agnes sighs. You want real bread? Get oats, dry oats, or beg the miller's wife for barley cakes. You nod. Then a man nearby collapses, seizing, foaming. People groan, not with fear, with annoyance. Another one, someone mutters, keep him away from the livestock. Another says, no one helps, no one knows how. You take one last look at the bread. The mold seems to shimmer now, like it's alive. You walk away, fast, because in Esfeld, bread isn't the staff of life. It's a loaded crossbow pointed at your gut. Welcome to the leper parade. You hear the bells first. Not church bells, not fire bells. These are different, smaller, closer, and crueler. A hollow ding-ding that rolls through the square, like thunder wearing boots. Then you see them, 6 figures, hooded, shuffling, cloaked in linen too thin for dignity, too thick for pity. Each carries a stick, each wears a small bell strapped to the thighs, neck or sleeve. It's not for flair, it's a warning. This is the leper line. The crowd parts, slowly, reluctantly, like they're not sure if avoiding eye contact is enough to protect them. People cover their mouths. A child asks too loudly, will they melt? His mother yanks him backward and slaps his ear. The lepers say nothing, they just walk. One of them, tall, maybe female, with a limp like a folding chair, rings her bell once as she passes a bread cart. The vendor throws a stale crust toward her feet, without making eye contact. She bends to pick it up. Her hand is missing 2 fingers. No one flinches. They've seen it before. You're frozen. You've heard about them. Sure, whispers in alleys. Jokes from drunk blacksmiths. Warnings from priests. Be grateful, they say, or you'll end up with the bell. But seeing it, that's different. The procession moves on. One of them is humming, badly. Another stops to scratch at his side, revealing an arm so discolored it looks like bark. A third just stares ahead, eyes watery and blank, like he already left the world, and forgot to tell his legs. A boy beside you spits into the dirt. They should be in the cave. What cave? You ask, mouth dry. The leper cave, north end of the woods. They live there, if they're still living. You glance back at the line. They're gone, vanished down the hill, past the tannery, past the boundary stone marked with 3 black X, out of town.
Out of sight, out of mind. Here's the unsanitized truth. Leprosy, or what medieval folks called leprosy, wasn't always Hansen's disease. It was a catch-all term. Skin lesions, leprosy. Swollen joints, leprosy. You coughed weird and your foot looked funny, leprosy. No microscopes, no nuance, just bells. And once you had the bell, you had nothing else. Lepra cells varied, but in towns like Esfeld, the rules were simple. Don't touch. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't enter churches, inns, or bathhouses. Ring the bell. And above all, be grateful they haven't buried you alive yet. Historians still argue whether these laws came from fear or faith. Probably both. Some churches built leper hospitals. Some built walls. Esfeld, it built a cave. You sit on a stone, stunned. Agnes, the midwife, reappears beside you like a badger with perfect timing. You've seen them then. You nod. She chews a root and spits. Used to be 7. What happened? Died, she says simply. Or wandered too close to the Count's dogs. You feel sick, she continues, almost gently. I stitched the tall one's leg once, long ago. Her name was Marta. You ask, what happened to her? Agnes's eyes narrow. She lived. And somehow that's worse than any other answer. You glance down the road, hoping to catch one last glimpse. Nothing. Just dirt. And silence. And the lingering sound of that little bell echoing in your ears like guilt you didn't earn but can't put down. Back in the square, life resumes. Someone's arguing over eel prices. A goat escapes its tether. Children laugh again, too loud, too clean. And somewhere in a dark hole north of town, 6 people sit in the dirt, eating crusts and waiting for their bodies to give out before the world does. You don't eat the bread in your pocket. You leave it by the gate, just in case. Feast or starve, no middle ground. It hits you like whiplash. 1 minute you're passing a dying man chewing moss, and the next the entire town square is bursting with music, meat, and people who look like they haven't smelled fear in an hour. Flags flap from windows. Barrels are being rolled into place. A line of sausages hangs from a second-story beam like edible laundry. There's even a juggler, poor coordination, missing a finger, but committed. You blink. Stunned. Weren't you just watching a woman with leprosy limp into the woods? Apparently today is a festival. You grab a child sprinting past with a roasted turnip. What's happening? Feast day. He crows. Saint Cerdwin's miracle. He sneezed in a cave and cured a mule. Then he's gone. You don't know who Saint Cerdwin is. You don't ask again, because Esfeld, in its unpredictable rhythm of suffering and spectacle, has shifted into celebration mode. And when that happens, everyone pretends like death isn't a few inches behind them with a rusty spoon. You limp closer. The food tables are groaning roasted fish, mutton pies, flatbread stacked like tiles. Someone's boiling cabbage with way too much enthusiasm. A woman slices apples with a knife that looks more like a weapon. Even the pigs on spits are somehow smiling. It smells incredible. It smells dangerous. You glance around. People are dancing badly. Someone's playing a hurdy-gurdy, like it owes him rent. 2 boys are fencing with brooms. The mayor is wearing a hat so large it has its own opinion. And at the center of it all, Gisela, the brewer's wife, stands on a crate holding a tankard the size of your head. To survival. She shouts. To survival. The town echoes. Then she downs the ale in one mighty gulp, wipes her mouth with her sleeve, and falls backward into a hay cart. The crowd erupts in cheers. Someone hands you a skewer of roasted rabbit. You stare at it. It's hot, juicy, fragrant. You bite. It burns your mouth, and it's still the best thing you've tasted all month. You let yourself breathe. For a moment. But then you notice the missing pieces. The people who aren't here. Old widow Else. Gone. The blacksmith's apprentice. Missing since yesterday. Roderick the miller. His wife is here. Dancing, laughing too loudly. You ask Agnes because of course she appears again. What's going on? She chews a boiled bean. Feast day, she says. We celebrate. We gorge. Because tomorrow the rains might come. Or the rats. Or the tithes. She shrugs. Might as well dance now. You look around. The sky is clear. The fires are warm. The bread is only slightly moldy today. Everything looks fine. But then a man collapses in the corner. No one panics. They just roll him to the side, cover him with a blanket, and step over him to reach the gravy pot. A fiddler starts a new tune. A bawdy one. Someone tosses you a cup of watered ale. You drink it. Too fast. Here's the awful truth. Hunger in the Middle Ages wasn't constant, it was rhythmic. You starved, then feasted, then starved again. Harvests were unpredictable. Storage was unreliable. And when food did show up, you ate like it might disappear mid-chew. Historians still debate whether these feast days were genuine religious devotion or just sanctioned panic eating. In Esfeld, it's both. By nightfall the square is a battlefield of joy. People are drunk. Some are crying. A man proposes to a goat. The goat walks away. You sit by a fire, belly full, limbs heavy, brain fogged. Across from you Gisela stirs awake in the hay. She grins. Made it another year, she slurs. You nod. You're not sure if she means the feast, the day, or life in general. Does it matter? You watch the stars for a while, and you know deep down that this moment of warmth, laughter, and greasy meat will make the next famine so much worse. Because now, you remember what having enough feels like. And soon, you won't. The wind carries screams. It starts just after midnight. The feast has slumped into snores. You lie curled near a barrel, belly full, brain swimming with bread, and fingers still faintly greasy from rabbit fat. Somewhere nearby, A flute warbles a dying note before silence swallows the town whole. Then the wind shifts. Cold, sharp, hungry. It rolls down the alleyways like it's looking for someone. You sit up slowly, blinking. The stars are gone. Clouds now, thick and low like the sky's been pulled tight around something it's trying to hide. And that's when you hear it. A scream. Not playful, not drunk. Real. It rips through the air like a knife through wool. A woman's voice, ragged and terrified. Then a man shouting, fast, desperate. Then something that might be a child. You stumble to your feet. Others stir. A few rise, most don't. Another scream, closer. You limp toward it because you're stupid, or noble, or both. You round the corner into the shadowed street behind the Reeves house and freeze. The door is wide open. Inside, chaos. Furniture overturned. A lantern shattered. Blood smears on the wall, like someone was dragged. You don't see the people, just the signs they were here, and then weren't. From behind you, a voice. Don't go in. You turn. Gregor the jailer stands there, shirt half buttoned, eyes like glass. He's holding an axe. Not clean, not ceremonial. Used. What happened? You whisper. He doesn't answer. Instead he tilts his head toward the far end of the street. They're taking them. Who? He shrugs. Doesn't matter. You follow his gaze. And there they are. Figures. Moving quickly. Hoods up. Torches out. No heraldry. No flags. Just silence and efficiency. One holds a sack that's moving. Another is closing the door of a cart already filled with bodies. Or bodies-shaped things. You stumble back. Gregor grabs your arm. Forget this, he says. You didn't see it. No one sees it. You're about to argue when you hear the whistle. Not musical. Not human. It cuts through the town like a blade through smoke. The wind shifts again. Doors slam shut. Curtains pull. A dog whines and disappears under a stall. Someone throws you inside a shed. You don't see who, but the door shuts and locks. You crouch in the dark. The wind howls now. Around corners. Through cracks. Under doors. Like it's looking. And then, silence. Real silence. Not peaceful. Waiting. Here's the part that no one writes down. Sometimes people just vanished. No trial. No notice. Just gone. Bandits. Maybe. The bishop's enforcers. Could be. Something worse. Likely. Esfeld doesn't ask. It moves on. Fast. Historians still argue whether these were sanctioned purges or community panics. In records, they're called cleansings. In rumors, they're night tithes. In truth, they're warnings. The shed creaks. You stay still. The hammer in your chest drowns out thought. Eventually footsteps pass. Boots. Then the whistle again. Fainter. Then nothing. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. Then the door creaks open. Agnes again. Of course. She helps you up. Brushes straw off your tunic and says, "You saw too much." You nod. She hands you a root. Chew. For sleep. And forgetting. You don't ask what it is. You chew. It's bitter. Bitter enough to clean memories. She walks you back to the square. It's almost dawn. Smoke from the festival fires still drifts lazily through the town like ghosts too tired to haunt. You look around. No sign of the cart. No sign of blood. Just Esfeld. Breathing. Waiting. As if nothing ever happened. The castle gate only opens inward. You can see it now. Up on the hill. Grey stone. Cold angles. Towers like broken teeth. The castle watches Esfeld the way a spider watches its web. Still. Silent. But always waiting for something to twitch. You've heard rumors. Everyone has. About the lord who lives there. Or is it a baron? Maybe a duke. No one seems to know. And fewer seem to care. He hasn't been seen in months. Some say he's sick. Others say he's dead. And no one wants to admit it. Still the taxes come. The guards march. The castle breathes. Even if its master doesn't. You find yourself walking toward it. Slowly. Like something's pulling you. Maybe you're curious. Maybe you're too tired to resist the gravity of power. Halfway up the hill. A guard blocks your path. Chainmail. Frown. Halberd. Turn around, he says. You glance up at the walls, silhouette windows, arrow slits, stone carved with old saints and older sins. I'm not trying to get in, you say. He doesn't move. Good. You won't. You consider arguing, but his expression is the same one you saw on the pig at the feast, flat, patient, and absolutely willing to maul. You step aside. The road forks. One path leads to a small clearing, where the peasants sometimes gather when summoned, a petition court, they call it. Once a month they're allowed to beg the steward for mercy, coins or less tax. Success rate, somewhere between never and are you joking? You sit on a log. Another peasant approaches. An old woman with a bundle of dried thistle. Here to see the steward, you ask. She nods. My son's in the jail. They say he insulted the gate. You blink. The gate. She nods solemnly. Called it crooked. Steward says it's treason. You look at the castle again. The gate is crooked. But you say nothing. The bells toll once. The castle gate creaks, but it doesn't open. Instead, a small door built into the wall cracks ajar, and a man in blue robes steps out. Thin, pale, nose like a hawk. Lord Steward. He does not smile. Who seeks audience? He calls. The old woman rises. I do. My son. Denied. She hasn't finished speaking. He turns and vanishes back into the door. That's it. You help her sit back down. She sighs. Should have brought bread. Here's the irony. The castle is built to keep things in, not people power. Everything about it says control. The gate is inward facing. The guards don't answer to Esfeld. The windows don't watch the horizon. They watch you. The castle gives nothing, but it takes everything. Land taxes, harvest shares, timber rights, marriage approvals. You can't build a fence without asking. Can't sell a goat without tithing it. And if the steward doesn't like your face, you don't even get to beg. Historians still debate whether this level of feudal control was standard or exceptional. In Esfeld it's just how things are. You ask the old woman what she'll do. Wait, she says. Maybe someone else will ask for him. You sit together for a while. A merchant tries next. He wants permission to trade beyond the valley. He bows, smiles. Denied. The steward doesn't blink. A child offers berries. Denied. Eventually a guard tosses out a handful of copper coins and tells everyone to leave. It's not charity. It's hush money. You descend the hill. The castle watches, always watching, and never listening. Say amen, or face the stocks. You didn't sleep much after the castle. Something about the way its walls seemed to tilt inward like a throat about to swallow made your dreams twitch and stutter. You woke up to someone snoring beside you, and someone else throwing up ale onto a goat. The goat looked offended. It's Sunday now. You know this because the bells ring different. Slower, heavier, less urgent, but somehow more final. Church is not a suggestion in Esfeld. It's law. It's law. You stumble toward the chapel, along with the rest of the town, a slow uneven tide of wool and weariness. Some people carry candles, others clutch rosaries. Most just look guilty in advance. The building is small, but sharp. Stone walls, narrow windows, and a steeple that leans east as if trying to escape. Father Albrecht waits at the door. You remember him. The priest with the gold thread robe, and the voice that could tan leather. Today he's not smiling. Then again, he never is. He watches everyone as they enter. Not with curiosity, with record keeping. Where is Marta? He asks no one in particular. She's sick. Someone murmurs. No excuse. He replies. Inside it's cold. Always cold. The air smells like damp stone, melted wax and old fear. Pews creak under the weight of obligation. Children fidget. Adults glare. Someone coughs. Someone else whispers. Sinner. The sermon begins. It's not uplifting. Father Albrecht preaches like he's loading a crossbow. Slow, precise. Every word aimed to wound. He speaks of hellfire. Of devils with accounting scrolls. Of sins so subtle you've probably committed 3 just by sitting there thinking about soup. You zone out, until he yells. Blasphemy is not an opinion. It is a death warrant for your soul. You snap to attention. He locks eyes with someone near the back. A girl.
Maybe 60. It's Greta. She yawns. You see it. A small yawn. Nothing dramatic. He sees it too. The silence that follows is immediate and sharp. Greta realizes. She straightens. But it's too late. After mass, the stocks are waiting. She doesn't fight it. She just walks to the town square. Face pale. Jaw clenched. 2 guards open the wooden frame. She kneels. The wood slams shut around her wrists and neck. For yawning. The punishment. Public humiliation until sunset. No water. No food. Just glares. Maybe a few thrown onions. A boy nearby whispers. She's lucky. Last time someone sneezed during the creep, they got whipped. You sit down nearby. You don't want to watch, but everyone is. A man throws a lump of old bread. It hits her shoulder. A woman mutters. Maybe now she'll learn to respect the Lord. Here's the unbearable truth. Religion here is not comfort. It's compliance. It's a contract signed in fear and enforced by community shame. You know what historians argue about, whether medieval religion was personal faith or public control. In Esfeld, it's obvious. God lives here. But he speaks only through Albrecht. You watch Greta's chin tremble. She doesn't cry. Not yet. Agnes appears beside you. Of course, she didn't yawn. She mutters. What? She didn't yawn. Agnes says again. She sighed. At the mayor's son falling asleep on her shoulder. But Albrecht needs a sinner today. You nod. Because of course he does. Even the priest answers to someone. By sunset, Greta's lips are cracked. Her arms shake. Someone finally unlocks the stocks. She doesn't look up as she walks away. But you know she'll never sleep during church again. Neither will you. You decide then and there. From now on, you'll say amen. With extra emphasis. Even if you don't mean it. Especially if you don't. Every meal has a hair in it. It's supper time. Or what passes for it. The sun's down. The bells have rung. Greta's no longer in the stocks, though her face looks like someone wrung her out and hung her over a fence. A few embers still smolder in fire pits from the earlier feast, and the smell of stale pork fat lingers like a ghost with digestive issues. You're hungry again. Of course you are. Because in Esfeld, eating is a ritual of desperation. You don't eat because you're hungry. You eat because you're not dead yet. And that's something to maintain. You make your way to the inn, or what everyone calls the inn, which is really just a barn with delusions of grandeur. The roof leaks. The door sticks. The floorboards gave up months ago, and now just wind stepped on. Inside the air is a choking blend of smoke, sweat, boiled onions, and ancient cheese. You sit at a table already tilted from some previous bar fight. A bowl is slapped in front of you without a word. You don't know what's in it. You don't ask. The stew is brown, vaguely viscous. It smells edible. You pick up the wooden spoon and stir. First thing you find, a hair, long, black, curled at the end like it's trying to spell something. You pause, look around. No one else flinches. You watch a man opposite you pick something alive off his bread and still eat it. A girl giggles as her soup moves. Someone behind you whispers, "Ah, a good batch tonight. Extra thick." You take a bite. It's not bad. You chew something chewy. It might be meat. It might be shoe. You decide not to care. Here's the thing. Clean food doesn't exist here. Hygiene isn't a priority. It's not even a concept. Meals are communal. Hands are never washed. Spoons are rinsed at best. Animals live under the same roof you eat in. And if your stew doesn't have at least one bone fragment in it, it's considered thin. The innkeeper, Raymar, walks by with a tray of tankards. You try to catch his attention. "Raymar, this stew, is it?" "Don't." He cuts you off. "Just chew with purpose." He's a man of few words and many boils. His apron looks like it's been through a civil war. He limps from a rooster attack that occurred under mysterious circumstances last Whitsun. You keep chewing. You try not to wonder what chew with purpose means. A man across from you, Hulk, raises a tankard. "To the meat." "What meat?" "What meat?" someone asks. Hulk grins. "Exactly." Everyone laughs. Except you. You look into your bowl again. Something is definitely blinking. You push it aside and opt for the bread instead. It's better. Until you hit a nail. A nail. You hold it up. Raymar shrugs. Dropped a hinge in the dough again. You nod slowly, pocket the nail, and chew around the damage. Agnes slides onto the bench beside you. She's eating something grey. Do I want to know what that is? You ask. Don't ask. It's better, she says. Mouth full. Hair. You whisper. 2. You both nod like veterans who've made peace with something dark. You hear a loud belch. Someone shouts that the cat stole their sausage. The cat denies everything. It's on the roof now, chewing smugly. A man walks in, sits down, and immediately vomits into his own bowl. No one reacts. He gets up, swaps his bowl with someone else's, and sits again. That someone else shrugs and keeps eating. You whisper to Agnes. Is this normal? She snorts. Define normal. If no one dies, we call it dinner. You finish your meal. Scrape the bottom of the bowl with care. One last spoonful, then push it away. A final hair clings to the rim like a signature. You flick it off. Raymar collects the bowl. You want a clean one for next time. You pause. You have clean bowls. He grins. No, just thought I'd ask. You leave the inn with a full stomach and a slightly wounded soul. Your teeth ache again. Your belly churns. But you're alive. For now. The doctor will see you and bleed you. You wake up nauseous. Maybe it's the stew. Maybe it's the questionable ale. Maybe it's the fact that your entire digestive system is screaming like it just learned how to feel betrayal. Your head throbs. Your jaw still aches from the tooth extraction. Your stomach gurgles like a dying frog. You try to stand. You fail, which means one thing in Esfeld. You're now eligible for medicine. Congratulations. A neighbor. Probably one of the 3 women who lives near the pigsty. Hears your retching and drags you, semi-conscious, down a dirt path past the fields. You assume you're being dumped outside the leper cave. Instead, you're tossed gently onto a pile of straw just outside a hut with an antler nailed above the door. The symbol of healing, or hunting, or both. The door creaks open, and out steps Dr. Kunz. He's tall, bony, and wrapped in so many layers of wool and waxed linen. He looks like a candle about to be lit. He smells like vinegar, lavender, and dried meat. Another one. He sighs. He doesn't ask your name, just your symptoms. You try to speak, but your jaw pauses. Your stomach answers for you, with a sound that should not come from inside a person. He nods. Classic imbalance. Liver's rebellious. Spleen's arrogant. Humor collision. Could be wind. He means the 4 humors. The medieval belief that all human health issues are caused by the misalignment of blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Not germs, not viruses, just bile-based emotional conflict. You are now a battlefield of fluids. He pokes your abdomen with a stick. You grunt. See you, he says to no one. Liver. He pulls out a knife. A knife. You recoil. Calm, he says. Just a little bloodletting. Take the edge off. You try to stand. Agnes appears. Of course. Lie back, she says. He's good. Have you ever seen him save someone? You wheeze. No, she said. But I've seen him bury people with excellent posture. Kunz doesn't wait. He ties a strip of linen around your arm. Tight. He mutters a Latin prayer, then dabs your elbow with something that smells like moldy wine and shame. You don't see the blame. You just feel the sting. Then the wet warmth. Blood flows into a shallow bowl. Ceramic. Already stained. He watches the stream, nodding as if reading tea leaves. Thick to death. You eat pork recently. You blink. You played me pork. He raises an eyebrow. There's your problem. After a minute, he presses a cloth to the wound, then opens a sack of dried herbs, stuffs some in your mouth, and says, chew. You chew. It tastes like grass that's been stepped on by regret. He holds your wrist, counts something silently, then groans. Better, probably. He writes something with charcoal on a strip of bark, and shoves it into your chew. You ask, what's this? In case you die. Helps with the burial paperwork. You nod, dizzy. Here's the truth. Medieval medicine was part guesswork, part theatre and all gamble. Doctors were trained, sort of. Kunz once attended a lecture in mines, or at least stood outside one while eating soup. His tools include knives, leeches, herbs and pure confident guessing. Historians still argue whether doctors helped more than they hurt in places like Esfeld. The answer varies. Bloodletting was a go-to for everything from fevers to depression. Leeching was common, but mostly because leeches were easy to find and didn't demand coin. You lie back on the straw, weak but breathing. Kunz offers you a jug. Drink this. It's for clarity. You sip. It's burning. What is this? You croak. Fermented nettle and goat piss. You gag. It works, he says. Or it doesn't. Either way, the liver stops complaining. You believe him. He stands, wipes his hands on your tunic, and walks back into his hut. The door shuts. You lie there, bleeding slightly, chewing bitter leaves, and realizing that this was by local standards a good appointment. The fever breaks by evening. Mostly, you stagger back toward town, arms shaking, stomach quiet but cautious. You pass a child coughing violently into a rag. You hand him your bark net. You'll need this more than me. He nods, solemn, and you limp on, slightly lighter, inside, and out. Your neighbor's cow just cursed you. You've made it through the night. Burn. Your bloodletting wound is crusted over. Your teeth still protest anything hotter than lukewarm broth. And you're beginning to suspect your son left your body somewhere between the stew and the goat piss. But hey, it's morning. And in Esfeld that means one thing. Superstitions awake now too. It starts when you pass Heinrich the cowman's cottage. His cow is standing by the fence, chewing solemnly, staring at you like it knows things about your past. Deep things, regrettable things. You pause. The cow blinks. Then it lets out a moan. Not a moan, but a low unnatural moan that sounds exactly like the noise your Aunt Helga made before her hip snapped in church. An old woman nearby gasps and points at you. That beast just took your soul. You laugh. Mistake. She spits 3 times into her apron and hisses. Don't mock. Heinrich's cow sees the veil. You look at the cow again. It licks its nose. Someone else chimes in. Cursed cow. Every time it cries like that, someone loses a child or a toe. Or a husband, shouts another. You try to move along. Too late. A cluster forms around you. Neighbors, strangers. One man carrying a chicken who looks deeply invested. They murmur. They nod. Someone starts praying. Child begins rubbing mud on the forehead to soften the odor. You protest, but no one listens. You protest, but no one listens. Because in Esfeld, superstition is law. In places where law doesn't reach. You've learned that magic isn't robes and wanzers. Kisses muttered over lentils. Charms braided into hair. Herbs nailed to your door. It's believing that a cow can doom your whole bloodline. Because one time it looked at your cousin, and he sneezed weird. Agnes appears. Of course. She holds out a dried toad wrapped in flax. Hold this. I'm not holding a toad. Then enjoy your next 2 weeks of boils and vomiting frogs. She says, completely serious. You hold the toad. Instantly people relax. Except the cow. The cow still watches. Now spit in your shoe and walk backward to the market. Agnes adds. Why? To confuse the spirits. You have to make yourself hard to fight. This is your life now. You do it. Because in medieval Germany rational thought has to share a bed with ritual. You can believe in God's hat and hexes. You can go to church in the morning and bury a nail in the field by moonlight to stop your cabbages from catching demons. Historians still argue whether the rise in superstition came from desperation,
isolation,
or leftover pagan practices. In Esfeld it's all 3. People need to believe in something they can control, even if it's nonsense. You reach the market, dizzy and muddy, still walking backward. The fishmonger Marta watches you. Cow got you. You nod. She hands you a sprig of rosemary. Chew that. Makes your blood harder to curse. You don't ask how blood gets cursed in the first place. You chew. A man in a green hood walks past and whispers, don't look left today. There's an owl in the way. You don't ask. You don't look left. You buy some turnips, carefully avoiding the basket that smells like sadness. You count your coins with your left hand only. You greet a beggar before you pass them. You follow the rules. By sunset, the curse seems lifted. No boils, no strange dreams. Your toes still attached. The cow blinks at you once from across the field, but nothing happens. You don't relax, because tomorrow it might blink twice, and then who knows?
You can't read, but you're still being watched. Evening again, you've survived another day of curses, suspicious soup, and unsolicited herbal therapies. You'd celebrate, but your celebration options are limited to 1 stale bread and 2 watching rats argue over a beet in the corner. You wander toward the edge of town, where the trees begin to outnumber people, where Esfeld starts to forget itself, and where the monastery looms. It's small, just a squat, moss-laced stone building that smells like old wood and regret, but inside lives the most powerful force in the village after the steward, and maybe the cow, the written word. Not that you can read it. You walk through the open gate and instantly feel underdressed. Not because of the torn tunic or the mud on your boots, but because knowledge itself seems to look down its nose at you here. The monks inside glide like ghosts between benches, feather pens in hand, eyes never meeting yours. They are scripters, transcribing texts they barely understand into languages no one in town speaks. Inside, the air is thick with candle smoke and dust, scrolls, parchments, binding threads, books locked with clasps. You stare at a massive volume open on a desk. The lettering is perfect. Black, red, gold, tiny flourishes. It looks like art. Dangerous art. Brother Otto notices you. He walks over. You've met him before, briefly. He has a voice like spilled ink, slow, heavy, absorbing. He gestures toward the book. You wish to read. You nod sheepishly. He smiles, which surprises you. Then he turns the book around. It's upside down. You squint. Is it Latin? Yes, he says. Or Greek, sometimes both. This one tells the story of a saint who fasted for 30 days and then exploded in light. You blink. He nods. I'm not sure what exploded means, but I copied it. You touch the edge of a page. It's vellum stretched animal skin. That saint's miracle is written on what used to be a sheep. Why don't we write on wood, you ask. He shrugs. Sheep are quieter. You stare at the rows of books. How many people in Esfeld can read? 6, he says. Maybe 7. If you count the mayor, which you shouldn't. You ask, then why make so many books? Otto leans closer. Because books remember when we forget. You nod like you understand. You don't. Here's what's tragic. Knowledge exists here, but it's locked, behind language, behind education, behind custom. The peasants fear books. The nobility hoard them. The clergy treat them like divine whispers. And if you can't read, you just trust whoever says they can. Historians still argue whether literacy was a privilege or a tool of control. In Esfeld, it's both. The word of God, filtered, the laws, interpreted for you. And once something's in a book, it's true, even if it's completely insane. Otto hands you a slate and a stick of chalk. Draw something, he says. You scrawl what might be a chicken. He smiles. You're halfway to scripture. You spend an hour there copying letters like they're spells. You still don't know what they mean, but something about the lines calms you. You realize that knowledge isn't just locked, it's sacred, and feared, and fragile. You ask Otto if he ever writes anything of his own. He hesitates. Sometimes he whispers, but if it's not copied it's not trusted, and if it's not trusted, it might be burned. You nod. You give him your slate. He studies your chicken. Faithful, he says. Maybe prophetic. He means it. You walk back into town under a blanket of stars. Still illiterate, but aware now that someone somewhere once knew something, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll learn just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be burned. It's laundry day. The river is judging you. You've just finished pretending not to care about your own illiteracy, when Agnes corners you near the well. We're going to the river, she says, to drown ourselves. You ask, only half joking. To do laundry, she replies, handing you a reeking sack of soiled tunics and one sock that's probably beyond redemption. You consider arguing, but then again you smell like soup, donkey hair, and unprocessed trauma. So you follow. The river is just outside Esfeld, where the ground flattens and the trees open up into what might almost be called a pleasant view. Almost. There's a dead fish in the reeds and a broken shoe floating downstream. 4 women are already there, kneeling on flat stones, beating the sins out of shirts with wooden paddles. They don't look up as you approach. You drop your bundle and squat beside Agnes. The water is freezing. You dip the first tunic in, and a small cloud of dirt and something you hope is not blood billows into the current. Agnes leans over. You have to scrub harder. Pretend it insulted your mother. You slap the tunic against the rock. It slaps back. Laundry in medieval Germany is not about fresh scents or soft linens, it's about survival. If your clothes get too filthy, lice move in, then come rashes, then come infections. And if you catch the wrong one, congratulations, you're a cautionary tale. And yet no one owns more than 2 tunics. So when it's laundry day, it's also nudity day. Some women have stripped down to shifts. One elderly woman is proudly topless, daring anyone to say a word. Agnes hums a hymn while scrubbing. You hum along. It's hypnotic. Until a scream. Everyone turns. Elsa, the weaver's wife, holds up a garment. There's a hole in it the size of a fist. She gasps. Mice. Everyone tuts sympathetically. Elsa collapses to her knees. It was my good shift. Agnes pats her shoulder. It had a good life. Elsa sobs into the cloth. You return to scrubbing. Then someone brings up the bleaching field, a nearby patch of grass where linens are laid out to dry and whiten under the sun. The problem? That field is also used by goats, who eat linen and poop enthusiasm. You offer to help carry the washed garments there anyway. Brave, Agnes says. And stupid. You make the journey. Sure enough. A goat eyes you as you approach. You spread the tunics on the grass. The goat saunters over. You wave your arms. It chews your sleeve. You win, you whisper. Defeated. You tie the garments to bushes instead. It's not perfect, but the wind is your ally today. You sit on a rock to dry your hands. A boy splashes past you with a net. Fishing, he shouts. You notice he's using someone's underpants as bait. No one stops him. Because in Esfeld, laundry day is a group activity, but the group is made of chaos, superstition, and whatever creature crawled out of your rinse bucket 5 minutes ago. Historians still argue about how often medieval people bathed or washed their clothes. The answer is not enough for anyone's comfort. Soap is rare. Hot water is a luxury. And stains are as permanent as surnames. You gather your half-wet tunics. Agnes offers you a square of stiff linen. Is this clean? You ask. She shrugs. It's cleaner than it was. That counts. You nod. Because it does. You walk back toward town with arms full of damp cloth and a growing sense that hygiene is not an end point here. It's a battlefield. And today? You sort of won. But your sock didn't. It's gone. Downriver. Into legend. Midnight knocks mean someone's died. Or worse, needs help. It's late. The moon has risen like a pale coin. No one wants to touch. The streets of Esfeld are quiet now, save for the occasional shuffle of straw sandals or the distant hiccuping sob of someone who drank too much mead and remembered their marriage. You're in your corner of the barn, finally warmish under a blanket that smells like goat breath and moldy apple cores. You've just begun to drift into that weird medieval sleep that comes in shifts. First sleep, midnight wakefulness. Second sleep, when there's a knock. 3. Hard deliberate thumps. You freeze. Because everyone knows no one knocks after dark unless it's bad news, bad spirits, or a favor no one wants to owe. You get up slowly. Creak across the straw-covered floor. Crack the barn door open. It's Agnes. Of course. Face pale. Hands clenched. Hair braided like she was trying to control something chaotic. You have to come. You blink. Am I dying? No. She is. She grabs your arm and pulls you into the night. You want to protest. You want to pretend you didn't hear the knock. But you already stood up. And now the universe has expectations. You pass the still glowing embers of the blacksmith's forge. Past the shuttered inn where someone is clearly snoring in harmony with a pig. Past the chapel, where the candles inside flicker like frightened whispers. You reach Marta's home. The fishmonger. She's on her back. Eyes rolling. Breathing ragged like she's wrestling invisible wolves. Her daughter kneels beside her muttering prayers in 3 languages. none of them useful. Bit by a rat. Agnes says. You look at the wound. It's red. Swollen. Pulsing. You back away instinctively. Because you know what this means. Plague. Or fever. Or something worse. And there's no cure. Only rituals. A neighbor hands you a rag soaked in vinegar. Put it on her forehead. She says. It draws out the poison. Someone else ties a string around Marta's ankle. To keep the soul from falling out. You are now part of a midnight healing squad. And no one asked your opinion. They rub onion on the wound. They wave sage smoke over her chest. Someone suggests singing. You do. It's off key. It's awkward. It's the best anyone can do. Marta shudders. You all wait. And wait. Agnes finally stands. If she's alive by sunrise, we call it a miracle. You nod. Because hope is the only medicine no one can dilute. Here's the terrifying part. Medieval night was a world of its own. The day belonged to the powerful. The night belonged to fate. Or demons. Or desperate people trying not to be next. Historians still argue whether people in towns like Esfeld were more afraid of illness. Or being seen as cursed. Marta's daughter is already glancing around. Afraid someone might blame her for the rat. Or the fever. Or both. You help rewrap the wound. The smell is bad now. Sweet and wrong. You step outside for air. The stars are sharp tonight. Cold light on cold fear. Agnes joins you. She might make it. She says. You nod. Do people ever get better? Agnes shrugs. Sometimes. But even when they do, people still whisper. You both sit there watching the shadows twitch. At some point, the village rooster gives a confused cough like it forgot the script. Dawn is near. You re-enter the cottage. Marta's chest rises. Falls. Still breathing. EQ. Maybe. Just maybe. The knock wasn't death. This time. But next time. You're keeping the door shut. The priest says God is watching. But so is the landlord. You wake late. Your hands still smell faintly of vinegar and fish blood. Marta is alive. Last you heard. But she'll never sell mackerel again without someone blessing the scale weights first. You shuffle into daylight. Sore, hungry. And just in time to see Father Eckhart setting up for morning sermon in the town square. Because the chapel roof caved in last Lent and hasn't been fixed since. God, it seems, prefers an open ceiling plan. People gather slowly. The old. The young. The deeply suspicious. You join them. Not out of devotion. But because you heard there might be bread afterward. Eckhart is already mid-thunder. And those who gossip with wagging tongues shall find their mouths sealed by worms in the afterlife. You yawn. Agnes elbows you. Worms. Take notes. Eckhart is a gaunt man with fire in his voice and ash in his beard. His sermons are equal parts scripture and screaming. He quotes St. Augustine, and then threatens to slap someone with a crucifix, all in the same breath. But you can't look away. Because religion in Esfeld is not just faith. It's currency. If the priest says your field is cursed, no one will trade with you. If he says your goat is a demon, it's stew by sundown. If he says you looked at the moon wrong, well, good luck finding a wife this decade. Today he's preaching about sin, greed, pride, sleeping in. You start to feel personally attacked. Then comes the real reason for the crowd. Rent day. Because Lord Reinhardt's steward shows up right after the sermon. Always. He lets God soften you up. Then comes for the coin. A portly man with a quill in one hand and judgment in both eyes. He opens his scroll. Bartholomeus. 6 hens unpaid. Bartholomeus winces. Judith. Late on grain. She tries to argue. He silences her with a sigh.
If you...
Your stomach drops. You still owe flax from harvest. You begin to speak. Eckhart interrupts. He helped tend the sick last night. The steward frowns. Sainthood does not excuse taxes. You're silent. Because land ownership in medieval Germany is a divine pyramid scheme. God owns everything. The king rents it from God. The lords rent it from the king.
You rent it from the lords. And somehow you still owe 12 eggs and a wool tithe by sundown. Historians still argue whether peasants were more bound by fear of God or fear of eviction. In Esfeld both are intimately married and live in your attic. You offer a broken rake as collateral. The steward grunts, marks a symbol, and moves on. You're not off the hook, just postponed. Later you find Father Eckhart kneeling near the chapel ruins, muttering in Latin. You approach. He doesn't look up. You ever feel like the Lord doesn't hear you? You ask. He smiles. He hears everything. He just has priorities. You sit beside him. He adds, "The steward's right though. You do still owe flax." You groan. He pats your shoulder. "Confess more." It makes the bad luck easier to understand. You glance up at the open sky above the broken chapel. Doesn't it make you angry? What? That we suffer? He chuckles. No, that we pay rent and get worms. You both laugh. It's bitter, but it's honest. Because that's what life in Esfeld is, divinely supervised poverty. Your priest tells you to pray. Your landlord tells you to pay. And your cow tells you nothing. Because she's now the town oracle. You walk home, flaxless, faith wobbled, owing both heaven and earth. But you're still upright. And in Esfeld that's almost a miracle. You're not dead yet. But someone else probably is. The clouds roll in like a warning. Thick, low grey. They don't drift. They descend, swallowing the tops of trees and the last warmth in the air. Every villager looks up at the same time, and then down again, quickly, as if eye contact with the sky might provoke it. Agnes appears at your side. Her tone unusually quiet. "Storm's coming." You nod. But storms don't scare you anymore. Not after bloodletting, cursed cows and rat fever. Agnes shakes her head. Not that kind. A burial storm. You don't ask what that means. You just follow. You walk toward the far edge of the village, past the last huts, past the fields now stripped to their bony stalks, to the hill where the dead go. The graveyard. There's no fence, just a scattering of wooden crosses. Most unmarked. Some are tilted. Some are gnawed by weather or goats. One is on fire, which is either an accident or a ritual. A small group gathers. Faces are drawn. Clothes are darker than usual. No one is wailing, but no one is breathing either. You see the body, wrapped in linen, pale hands folded. You don't recognize the face. Agnes whispers. He was a stranger. Collapsed near the mill road. Fever. No one touched him. Did anyone try to help? A shrug. The priest said no. The cow said no. You raise an eyebrow. Yes, that cow. Father Eckhart steps forward. He reads a prayer. Latin again. No one understands it. But everyone nods solemnly. The wind picks up. Dust spins like regret. The grave is shallow. The body is lowered. The dirt is tossed. And then the silence. It's heavy. Ancient. You feel it settle in your bones. Because medieval burials are not about closure. They're about containment. Keep the disease down. Keep the spirits quiet. Keep the neighbors from panicking. Historians still argue how communities processed grief in places like Esfeld. You've seen it firsthand. They don't. Not really. Grief is folded, packed away, sewn into tunics and pressed between chores. You bury your sorrow, like you bury your sick fast hard, and with as few witnesses as possible. You return to the village. Everyone walks slower now, speaking in whispers. The kids are quiet. The chickens seem confused. You pass the blacksmith, who's hanging herbs on the doorframe. You pass the baker, who's kneading dough like she's trying to beat death out of it. You pass the barn, where you sleep and pause. Someone has painted a symbol above the door. You ask Agnes what it means. She looks at it, blinks. It means protection, or warning, or both. You nod. Later, in the dark, you lie awake, not because of noise, but because of stillness. That kind of silence, that only happens when a whole village is holding its breath at the same time. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, something shifts in the straw. You don't move. You don't speak. You just think about the man buried today, how no one knew him, and how you almost ended up in that grave. 3 or 4 times this week alone. You whisper to no one. "I'm not dead yet," but you don't say it too loud, because Esfeld listens. And so does the cow. You made a joke. Now the whole town wants justice. It started innocently. You were at the well waiting your turn. When you muttered, mostly to yourself, if this water gets any muddier, we might as well drink soup and call it divine. A throwaway line. Funny. Even. But Elsa the weaver was nearby. And Elsa hasn't laughed since 1348. She gasped, covered her child's ears, then scurried off like someone had just whispered witchcraft in her eardrum. You thought nothing of it, until Agnes came running 30 minutes later, looking like she'd just seen someone chew on a crucifix. Did you insult the well? What? No, I maybe. Not really. Well, it's spreading, she said. People think you mocked the sacred flow. You blinked. The what? The water. It's blessed. Remember. You don't remember. But now you're in trouble. Because in medieval Germany, jokes are dangerous. They travel faster than logic, and they grow teeth as they go. By midday 4 villagers had confronted you. One asked if you were working with spirits. One asked if your soul had milled you. One just handed you a beat and said, for penance. By afternoon, Father Eckhart summoned you. You stood in the chapel ruins again. This time not out of guilt, but accusation. Eckhart looked tired, like you were his 5th trial of the day. They say you mocked the village's sacred drink. I said it tasted like soup. You muttered. He nodded slowly, then stood. Words carry weight, especially in places where silence is holy. You felt your cheeks burn. I didn't mean to offend, but you did. The chapel creaked. Someone outside sniffs. And Eckhart, bless him, sighed. We will resolve this with a test. A what now? You're escorted to the center of the village. A circle forms. The test. Drink from the well in front of everyone. If nothing happens, you're fine. If something does happen, bad weather, a sneezing fit, a bird falling from the sky, you're cursed. You stand before the bucket. It smells like feet and copper. You lift it. You sip. Everyone watches. 10 seconds pass. 20. A child hiccups. Then, nothing. Eckhart exhales. You're spared. The crowd claps awkwardly. Not for joy. Just relief. Lilith. Agnes hugs you. That was close. You nearly had to live in the woods. Later that evening, you sit with your back to the barn wall, trying to make sense of the day. You said one thing. One line. And it nearly had you labeled a heretic. Because in Esfeld, speech is a weapon. But not yours. Everyone else's. Words become curses. Praise becomes politics. Silence becomes survival. Historians still argue whether humor was even allowed in peasant life. Some say, yes, it was all they had. Others argue jokes were for noble, because peasants couldn't afford misunderstandings. You've now lived both theories. You decide to talk less, but not completely, because Agnes laughs when you whisper. The next person who accuses me of sorcery is getting slapped with a soggy tunic. And that laugh, almost worth the trial. The doctor arrives, and everyone suddenly gets sicker. It's morning. Fog clings to the ground like it's hiding something. The chickens are quiet. The dog with 3 good legs is hiding under a cart. You know something's wrong, even before the bell tolls. But it does. Loud. 4 times. Agnes bolts upright. Physician's here. You blink. Esfeld has a physician. No, but today it pretends to. You're dragged from your hay nest, rushed through half-dressed townsfolk, and deposited in the square, where a tall, thin man stands, wearing a broad hat, a black coat, and a mask shaped like a bird's beak. The plague doctor. Only, there's no plague, yet, but his mere arrival makes people itch. The beaked mask is stuffed with herbs. His gloves are waxed. His boots look expensive. His voice is soft but scary, like a librarian who's just found you scribbling in a holy book. He doesn't speak often. Instead he hums. People line up. He asks no names, only symptoms. Agnes leans over and whispers. His name is Master Clemens. He studied in mines. You nod like that means something. Clemens examines the first patient, a woman with a swollen hand. He prods it. Hums. Then bleeds her with a knife. No explanation. Next, a man with a cough. Clemens burns a feather and waves it near his nose. The man sneezes. Clemens smiles. Balanced humors. He moves on. You're pushed forward. What ails you? He asks. You hesitate. Nightmares. He tilts his head. Mice. No drink. No drinks. He nods solemnly. Leeches. You stare. Wait. What? He retrieves a jar. Inside, wiggling fate. You hold out your arm. He applies 3 leeches. They stick with the enthusiasm of unpaid interns. You feel faint, not from the blood loss, but from the realization that he's making this up. Everyone is whispering now, because when a man arrives wearing a bird mask and asks to bleed your children, you either call the guards, or call it science. Asphalt chooses science, or something that smells like it. Historians still argue whether medieval doctors helped more than they harmed. In Clement's case, the tallies equal. He cured a rash last year by burying onions. He also tried to revive a goat by singing. You glance down. The leeches have swollen. Clemens plucks them off. Better, he says. How? Trust. You want to ask what school taught him that, but the bleeding won't stop. He hands you a bundle of set. For your pillow, to balance your split. For your pillow, to balance your split. You don't ask what spleens do. No one does. He departs by noon, leaving behind a trail of bandages, 3 confused chickens, and one mysteriously clean-toothed man, who insists his cough is less existential now. Agnes helps you walk home. Did it help? She asks. No, you say, but now I can't say it didn't, because that's the genius of the plague doctor. He comes. He bleeds. He lives, and by the time you realize it made no sense, he's already in the next village, and you're short 3 pints of blood and still have nightmare. But hey, at least your split feels respected. Your neighbor's pig just predicted a wedding, and no one's questioning it. You wake to shouting, not angry shouting, excited shouting, which is somehow worse. You limp outside, one arm still bandaged from yesterday's leech experiment, and find half the village gathered around Gertrude, the brewer's widow. She's holding up a squealing pig like it's the Messiah. She went straight to the red ribbon. Gertrude cries. Someone gasps. Agnes, beside you, whispers reverently. That means someone's getting married. You blink, because a pig touched string. No, she says, because it chose the red string. That's the marriage one. You glance at the other strings. Yellow, green, black. A few old shoelaces, one with a chicken bone tied to it. You take a deep breath. Who's getting married? Gertrude squints. Don't know yet. The pig's not finished. The pig is placed back on the ground. It sniffs, circles and sits on your foot. The crowd gasps again. Agnes starts laughing so hard she chokes on her sleeve. You, someone shouts. You shake your head furiously. Nope. No, the pig is mistaken. I am deeply unmarriable. Gertrude nods solemnly, which means it'll happen soon. The fates pity you. You look down at the pig. It grunts. Great. Now you're engaged to the village consensus. In Esfeld, omens don't ask permission. They simply arrive through pigs, clouds, drip, or whatever sneaks 3 times before dawn. And once people believe it's truth, by noon, 3 women have offered to help sew your wedding tunic. A child gives you a wilted flower. The blacksmith's daughter starts braiding her hair in your direction. You try to protest. Father Eckhart just pats your head. The Lord moves in mysterious livestock. You flee. Agnes follows, laughing all the way back to the barn. That poor pig, she weeps. That poor, she weeps. That poor, she wipes tears from her eyes. Don't worry. Most pig weddings end in a nut. You sit on a hay bale, face in hands. This isn't just about embarrassment. It's about how belief becomes law in a place like Esfeld. Because when you live in a world without certainty, where medicine is a man in a mask, and justice is doled out by weather, pigs become prophets, dreams become evidence, and laughter is a dangerous way to disagree. Historians still argue whether these folk rituals were charming superstition, or mechanisms of communal control. In Esfeld, they're both. That night, a feast is held, not for your wedding, but for the pig, who is now considered gifted. It receives a crown of turnips, and a small throne made of cabbage crates. You sit in the corner with your second bowl of barley stew. watching as people toast to young love and porcine prophecy. The pig squeals. Someone calls that a blessing. You quietly plan your escape. Maybe, if you run far enough, you'll find a village where marriages require consent, and livestock can't read your romantic future. But deep down, you know, asphalt always knows.
Someone lost a toe, and it's now part of a legal dispute. You were hoping for a quiet day. Just one. Just one unremarkable day, where no animals speak Latin, no dreams predict doom, and no one bleeds into your porridge. But Esfeld had other plans. You're passing through the square, nibbling a sad crust of bread, when you see a crowd forming near the blacksmith's forge. That's never good. Crowds in medieval villages mean somebody died, somebody's screaming, or somebody's trying to sell a chicken that clearly belongs to someone else. This time it's none of those. It's Ulrich the miller, hopping. Literally, because his left big toe is gone. Clean off, wrapped in a rag. Being held up like a cursed relic. Agnes rushes over. What happened? Ulrich looks pale. The pig stepped on the axe. Agnes says what you're thinking. Whose pig? Ulrich points. That pig. All heads turn. It's the pig from yesterday. The wedding pig. Apparently fame has gone to her head. She'd wandered into the forge, rooted around in the woodpile, and stepped directly onto a misplaced hatchet while Ulrich was standing too close. You examine the scene. There's the blood. There's the axe. There's the pig. And now, there's a lawsuit. Ulrich wants restitution. From Gertrude, the pig's owner. Gertrude refuses. She's a prophet. Prophets aren't liable. Ulrich holds up the toe still in the rag. Then I want a holy blessing. 3 loaves and compensation in oats. Eckhart is summoned to mediate. He examines the pig. Examines the toe. Mumbles something in Latin that might be a recipe or a curse. Finally he announces, this was an act of divine misdirection. The pig must fast for 3 days. Ulrich shall receive half an oat sack and 1 slipper, made to size. Ulrich protests. What about the toe? Eckhart replies solemnly, it has served its purpose. It is free now. The crowd nods. You, on the other hand, begin quietly laughing. Because here it is. Medieval justice in its rawest form. Personal injury law as interpreted by livestock theology and weather patterns. Historians still argue whether feudal law was rooted in fairness or pure confusion. In Esfeld, confusion wins every time. The toe becomes a local legend. Children throw turnips at it behind the forge. Gertrude claims the pig hasn't blinked since the incident. Eckhart insists the toe will grow back, if the Lord deems it ornamental. Ulrich builds a tiny coffin for it. Holds a funeral. Half the village attends. You do not. You're busy. Making sure your boots are on tight. And your toes are all accounted for. Because in Esfeld, even the smallest body part can trigger a theological crisis and a property dispute. And you're just trying to finish your bread. But someone screams. Again. The pig is now trying to climb the chapel ruins. Agnes sighs. She's ascending. You shake your head. The real miracle is that anyone here still has both feet. You're finally resting until someone accuses the moon of theft. Tonight is quiet. Not peaceful, just suspiciously quiet. No rats have exploded, no pigs have prophesied, and no one's asked you to bleed into a communal jar for crop luck. You've even managed to snag the warmest spot in the barn, right next to the hay that smells least like fermented turnip foot. You close your eyes, and then you hear it. A voice. Wailing. It stole my spoon. You groan. Step outside. It's Heinrich, the oldest man in Esfeld who lives under a cart and claims he once dated the Virgin Mary before she got famous. He's pointing at the moon. I set the spoon down. Right there. Look. Gone. You squint. There is indeed no spoon. Just some dirt, a beet stub, and a very confused frog. Agnes appears behind you, whispering. Last week he accused a thundercloud of stealing his trousers. You sigh. And did it? Well, they were missing. The villagers gather. Because in Esfeld, every incident, no matter how absurd, is a possible omen, legal crisis or interdimensional haunting. Eckhart is summoned again. He arrives mid-chew with a biscuit in hand. Heinrich repeats the accusation. The moon. It glinted. Then the spoon vanished. Eckhart, eyes bleary, simply replies, "Then the moon must answer." He turns to the crowd. "Tonight we fast. You blink. For a spoon." Eckhart nods, until the truth shines down. And just like that, a lunar trial begins. People begin whispering old tales. The kind involving moon thieves and sky spirits who take silver to pay their debts to the stars. One woman claims the moon once took her favorite chicken. Another says her dreams are brighter when she sleeps with her mouth closed. You want to scream, but you don't. Because in Esfeld, to mock the moon is to invite forgetfulness, crooked teeth, or both. A small council is formed to watch the moon's behavior. You are volunteered. You sit in the square staring upward, shivering, while Agnes tries to keep warm by reciting every name she knows that rhymes with spoon. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers genuinely believed in celestial theft or simply needed a narrative to explain random misfortune. In Esfeld, there's no difference. Hours pass. Someone brings broth. Someone else offers you a spare sock for moon protection. And finally, mercifully, Heinrich gasps. He reaches into his coat, pulls out the spoon. It was there the whole time. He holds it up like Moses parting the Red Sea. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Eckhart proclaims the moon is innocent. Tonight it has shown mercy. A cheer rises. A cheer. They release a chicken into the night, as thanks. You turn to Agnes. "I swear I'm dreaming." She nods. "That or we both died weeks ago. And this is purgatory." You trudge back to the barn, slide into your hay, pull your cloak tight, and whisper, "Let me sleep just one night without divine interference." Outside the moon glows, smugly, and you're still bleeding, just more slowly now, from 100 tiny absurdities that have sliced your soul like invisible paper cuts. But at least you didn't lose your spoon. And now, as the last candle gutters and the barn quiets, you finally let your breath slow. The chaos of Esfeld fades behind your eyelids. Pigs predicting marriage, cows judging morality, priests debating with the weather, and spoons accused of celestial betrayal. It all softens now. The hay beneath you grows still. The creak of distant shutters becomes a lullaby. Even the moon, still smug, perhaps slips behind a veil of cloud, no longer watching, no longer judging. The aches in your limbs begin to blur. The sting of vinegar-soaked wounds, the dull throbbing from a leech's farewell kiss, the scratch of straw against skin, they all dissolve into something quieter, something you can sleep in. Because somehow, through the absurdity and superstition, through the bloodletting and beet-eating and barefoot sprinting from goats with crowns, you survived. You made it through a day that began with curses and ended with absolution from the moon itself. That's no small thing. In Esfeld, peace isn't given. It's stolen in whispers and cradled in silence. So hold yours now. Feel your breath settle like dust on an untouched scroll. Let your body become part of the stillness. Let your mind drift, not away from the madness, but deeper into it, where it's softened by time and shaped like a story you once dreamt. And if tomorrow brings another pig tribunal, or a thunderstorm trial, or a beat-related inquisition, let that be tomorrow's burden. Tonight you rest, unmarried, slightly wounded, possibly blessed, but alive. And here, sweet dreams.